I do not know whether or not we're going to have any kind of compliance with that one, but we are live.
We can hope.
Head on pillow. Then you go to your own room. Which is really cold because I turned the heater off. Then lie down. Anyway. Hello, welcome back to this channel.
Welcome back to Knitting Book Club. It's chaos.
Oh, apparently someone's just gone live, Charlotte.
Yeah, I just got that notification. Some weirdo. Something about like reading.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, my name could literally be Hassled Mum again tonight. It really could. Are you muted for a reason?
Just pulling up the chat.
No worries.
There we go. Pop out and then close the tab, and we're good.
Okay, well, before we get into the book, are you knitting tonight or just eating?
I will be knitting as soon as I no longer have the risk of spilling pumpkin soup on it, because I just grabbed either knitting or sewing, actually. I've got an old pair of jeans that I put on the other day. The crotch is all ripped, but like not so bad that it's not patchable. So I was like, why don't I turn these into like some deliberately sort of patchworky punk jeans?
Nice.
Because they're really comfortable. And I've got like 3 different color denims that I can use to make patches.
You just cannot
one bit of denim, the patch on the inside, and then ended up patching the outside with kinesiology tape, which I'm not sure if that'll be a permanent solution. I put it on there originally just to hold it in place while I sewed the patch on the inside in.
Oh, yeah.
But the tape actually held really well, and I thought if I stitch the tape down, because it's a stretchy fabric tape, it stretches with the fabric. It's kind of the perfect patch, except for the fact that it's bright red and in the crotch area. Which the bright red wouldn't be a problem anywhere else, but there it's debatable. I did try and texture it black. Also, yeah, I have like lots of drawing on my arm at the moment. So this is from me test drawing a character tattoo last night when I was bored. I did not get it quite.
Best way to sort it out?
Pardon?
That's the best way to organise, figure out whether or not it's going to work. Mark, stop it.
Well, I was like, I had the realization because I was like, I kind of wanted to give this tattoo design that I have on Pinterest, or like the way that I think about it, right? If you're writing something and you rip a tattoo design off of Pinterest, I feel like that's completely fine, because when you describe that tattoo, people, when they're reading it and imagining it and then drawing fan art, are never going to draw it exactly the same as the original one that you were using as a description base.
Yeah.
So they're going to reimagine it enough that it will be original. So this is kind of like just me drawing a version of this one off Pinterest, which I did not get particularly right, and I don't think it's the sort of thing that
lie down.
But it was also sort of, because in that first scene that I've written with a bar fight now, I think I was looking at it to see the food references last night, and it was really funny actually, because I hadn't decided what the food was going to be in that scene. So instead of trying to come up with something, I just wrote food in square brackets wherever I needed to refer to it. And so it's one of the things that I'll go back in later and add the detail in. But in that scene, she's got a bit of glass still like embedded in the forearm from blocking someone smashing a bottle on her in the middle of the fight. And she's drunk enough that she can't feel it, because it's sort of like alcohol acts as an anesthetic. Has an analgesic effect, as the chemists would say. So she can't really feel it. Doesn't really bother. But then in the scene when she's picking the glass out, I was like, wait, I wanted her to have a tattooed arm as well, which means I can add in the hilarious little detail of her complaining about the fact that she's going to have to get it touched up because otherwise it's going to be like a scar patch in the middle of because it's right in the middle of a bit of ink. And so that's like a great little cheat into then being able to describe the tattoo. Right in like the opening scenes. Beats a mirror scene, that's for sure.
Sorry, someone's got the duty of watching his sister's monitor and he keeps touching it.
Oh.
We should have been asleep 2 hours ago.
Please tell me this isn't flat. Is it flat?
Every time Daddy's first night of night shift, Daddy's like, it's like this. It really is. This is why I sometimes have to cancel streams.
Yeah. That's okay. All right. So today we're talking about the third book in the Shades of Magic series by V.E.Schwab, which is called A Conjuring of Light.
Oh, that was all right. That was Mummy. There you go. You've got the white pillow. Happy now? Yeah. So initial thoughts. Well, you've read it. This will be the third time you've read it?
This is, the second time we're reading it.
All right. So initial thoughts? Or thoughts?
Ow. Hang on.
Is it the book you remember reading?
Give me 1 second to just stop my toe. So I read this series last year.
Touching it.
And I really I tore through it, but like not at double speed or anything. There were bits of the reread that I definitely tuned out of, just a little bit. Because I wasn't quite in the mood for it.
I think that's part of my problem too. I'm just not in the mood for fantasy, and all we seem to be reading at the moment is fantasy.
Yeah. I half inhaled some soup, sorry.
Stop touching it. Can I tell him if he keeps touching it, he'll go blind? Will that work?
What's he touching? Is it the
Morgan's monitor?
Yeah.
Come on, just lay down.
I went to try and look at my pattern, and the tablet is flat, so that's not surprising because I don't use it very often. And the battery only lasts so long. Like, it lasts pretty well, but it's been at least probably a month since it's been charged. Probably not since I've used it.
Hey, Sui.
Charged. Hello, Sui. Welcome. Probably turn the brightness down a little bit. Where was I? The initial thoughts. So, first read through. So I was the one who really pushed to do this series because I read them outside of book club and I really enjoyed it. On second reading, I definitely I think particularly because we were reading it and talking about it at the same time, I definitely
Let's rephrase that. Renee was whinging.
Pardon?
Renee, let's rephrase that. We weren't reading and talking. Renee was flat out whinging.
Well, yeah, so I sort of had a more critical reading this time, I think. And there's certain things that I think kind of annoyed me the first time.
Okay, let's be fair though. The whole point of this book club is that we are reading things to learn what works and what doesn't work for our writing. So you do have to be more critical in this space than what you would normally be if you just read it for fun.
Yeah. So there's things that when I was reading it for fun, I definitely noticed, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I was enjoying it. So when we're reading it critically, there's things that I was I will be able to discuss. We've already talked a bit about. So there's a bit about Lila, there's a bit about Alucard and Rye, and there's a bit about the parents. I have several thoughts about the parents. The parents is one of the things that annoyed me a little bit, and I think it's one of the things that annoyed me a little bit on the first read. Just because I wouldn't call it a trope per se, but it's like a certain thing. Like, I will give it this. So it's not YA at all, really. Like, it has a bit of a YA feel, but it's not really YA, and it doesn't use a lot of the tropes of YA. But it does
YA dressed up as an adult.
Pardon?
It's YA dressed up as an adult.
I would call it a new adult, even though that's not an official genre. I think that's where I'd put it. Because there's adult books that I would definitely not put in new adult, like Altered Carbon, like the N.K. Jemisin stuff, like Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson.
Look. To be honest,
Brandon Sanderson. Mistborn is probably like borderline between Shades of Magic and his other stuff. Like, Mistborn is the closest he gets to new adult because it's a coming of age story. But
the coming of age stories don't necessarily make them new YA
like
or new adult.
Protagonist coming of age story, but it's not YA. So that's why I would put it similarly.
That's the problem, and I think that's my fundamental issue with YA as a whole, is that people tend to think that it's the age of the people in the story that define it, and it's not. It's the themes, it's the graphic nature of the novel, how graphic it is, how thematic it goes to certain things. And I'm sorry, but you can I will die on this grave. It is a YA dressed up as an adult, and you're not going to change my opinion. Because
I agree, though. Like, in official categories, this is how I deal with it. In official categories, I would put it in adult, but in the way that you're describing it, YA dressed as adult, I kind of agree, because it's like it has all of the things that I wish YA had, with none of the things that from YA that annoy me.
Yes. I have annoyance.
Like a really solid YA concept, taking out all of the annoying tropey shit. There's still a few things that I'm sure are going to be all of the ones that we talk about. But it's to the point where it's like actually really enjoyable when I don't enjoy a heap of YA.
But that's the problem. Okay, that's the key problem. If this was a YA, classified as a YA, sold as a YA, this would define the genre as a YA. It would be winning accolades like her Galliant is at the moment, because that is a YA. It's been marketed as a YA. No one is trying to pretend it's an adult. And it's just everyone's loving it because she's really good writer. Don't get me wrong, she's a really good writer.
She's fantastic.
I just got extremely frustrated over certain age issues again. But my biggest problem is, and this is why I keep saying it's YA dressed as adult, because these characters are all meant to be, 22, 23, 21.
Lila is 19, I believe.
Yeah, Lila's the youngest of them.
20,
but Lila's her own
21.
issue.
And Alucard, we're going to have a whole chat about Alucard, because I think she's actually fucked up the timeline with him.
She has to.
And has said that he's said that he's older than he should be.
But regardless, he's far too experienced for his age, regardless. He's either 40 years old and pretending to be 40.
There is several issues.
Bear with me for a moment. I have to drag my toddler to his bed. Yeah, that got your attention. Get down. Yes, sorry.
Here's the thing. So the small issues that we have with it, where if it was a YA, we would say that's totally acceptable.
Yes and no. I still would get frustrated with it, but my thing is,
it would be less of an issue.
One of my key frustrations is the logic. And the problem with the logic is the basic setup of the Crown Prince being in his early 20s and still not engaged, married, or being told he has to breed an heir.
Yeah. So there's two main issues.
How woke you are. You've got a bloodline you got to keep going with.
Yeah. There's two main issues that I think Schwab has in this series.
Yes.
One is the timeline is too vague.
Yes.
And it's to the point where I think, like, I would assume that she would have it written out somewhere.
Well, this is the thing, is
Maybe
she's
a
discovery writer just like us. She's a discovery writer.
No, she actually plans stuff out now, but I'm not sure whether she's done that since finishing this or it was in the middle of transitioning this or whatever.
Okay, let's talk about the timing. Let's talk about the timing. Because the timing is very vague.
Yeah.
There's another book we recently read where timing is very vague.
Yes.
But
however,
what this author did was have 100-year-old elves.
Yeah. I would argue the timeline issues for Ashwood are less impactful to the overall plot of the story.
Because they're history. They're far history, and they're things that happened in the past. But also, though, is her time, the timeline for Ashwood of what is happening now is very tight. It's very well done. Yeah. I'm ignoring you and your knees because you should be asleep. I am not kissing your knees, and I'm not kissing your ass. Head on pillow. I will kiss them when you put your head on the pillow. Put your head on the pillow. It's his big thing at the moment. He hurts himself and he wants a kiss better. So there you go. Okay, so and the reason I brought it up is okay, the timeline for Ashwood and Brimstone is very vague in the background because and I've asked Emmy about that because I'm one of those people that likes dates. I like dates. And she's sort of done that deliberately because the elves themselves live for so long, they don't really pay that much attention. Doesn't mean much to them. Makes perfect sense for the world. The issues I had with the timing in this is, first off, to start with, it felt like it should have been a duology. The two should have been one. The book 2 and 3 should have been one book. She should have cut out all that bullshit at the front of book 2, referenced it, made a couple of notes, had a little bit there, but really dug in from maybe the start of the tournament onwards. And my other big issue is there are characters that know a lot. They know a lot. They're well traveled. They know a lot. Alucard being one of them. But when you actually dig in, regardless of which version of his history you get, he's really only had 3 days of being a pirate. And he wasn't even really a pirate. He was a pirate under duress. And I'm so fucking sorry, but that does not make you a pirate. And I'm sorry, Lila is not a pirate. She keeps calling herself a pirate through the whole goddamn novel, and you are not a pirate, honey.
I love it when Vastri in this one, when Vastri convinces her to play the game by saying that maybe she's not a pirate, maybe she's just a thief, and Lila's like, "Fuck you." It's so good. Hello,
the door just moved on its own. I think I have a cat trying to come in. Hi, Christina. Sorry, you guys all came in mid whilst Renee was mid rant. It's just look, it's and as I said, like there's books out there that have these issues, and I can forgive them. I can forgive them. V.E.Schwab's writing is beautiful, and I think it's great. There's just these little logic things that, as someone who is a writer and looking at this stuff in my own work, because it means a lot to me, it really does strike me sometimes as potentially a little bit lazy in not going back and just correcting things a little bit. Like it's all well and good to make a mistake and okay, look, she wanted Alucard to be, let's face it, Alucard is a bit of a, what's the male version of Mary Sue? The one of them. He's good at all this stuff. He's done all this stuff. He's fantastic. He's he's an object of desire for one of the main characters. But at the end of the day, when you actually dig into his background, he shouldn't know half the shit he knows.
Well, so there's stuff about Alucard that is justified, and then there's stuff that isn't quite, which is where it becomes frustrating, because it could have been fixed
very easily.
Like, it could have been fixed with like 2 or 3 lines.
Okay, I'm going to give you a scenario.
Maybe they will in the next series that they're writing, but it really needed to be in this series to not make us annoyed about it.
Okay, give you a scenario. Alucard and an uncle go out on a boat to do something when Alucard is 8 years old.
Exactly. That's where I said it could have been fixed in like one
It's completely destroyed. The boat gets, yes, it's JJ. Lie down. The boat gets taken over by pirates. Everyone gets killed except for Alucard, who at 8 is corruptible, and he gets taken on board and becomes the gully, the shit kicker kid, a Wesley, Princess Bride Wesley. I will kill you tomorrow. I will kill you tomorrow. That gives him at least 5 years on a pirate ship to learn things. Not only about the pirates, but how to fucking sail.
Yeah. Well, even if they hadn't done that, if they'd at least had some sort of mention to him having not just magic training, but like sword training, like physical training.
Something like the 24th or something person in line for the throne, he would have been expected to learn a lot of stuff, be educated quite well, and he would have been expected to have a career. And let's face it, a naval officer is a good career for this era that we're talking about. So, well, we're talking about normal era, but I mean, we're projecting what London of our history would be across the London.
This is another issue. So adding to the list of issues, we got timeline has a few inconsistencies. Let's put it that way.
Which
we have characters who
are frustrating,
unjustified skill levels, and we have historical fantasy that is
far too woke for
inconsistent with its fantasy worlds.
Okay, so this is a problem that I find a lot of magical realism has, because I've actually read a bit. In fact, one of the I can't reach it, but anyway,
the genre, I think,
it is a problem with the genre. And this is a definite problem of the genre, is when people they use a particular time frame. So, okay, London in 1843. Okay, just to throw a number out. They say it's at the start of the book. They say it's London 1843, except with werewolves or something. But they think that by saying it's London 1843, they don't actually have to world build.
Yeah.
Which is fine for the established stuff. Like, you don't, do you have plumbing? Do you not have plumbing? Do you have electricity? Do you not? That's all basically fine. But when you start adding in a magical element, as magical realism does, if you haven't established your normal rules properly, your magical rules become muddled as well. Because as a reader, you're sitting there going, well, hang on, what are we doing in 1843? And a car just went down the street. Oh, it's magic. It's like, no. You got to establish what's changed from 1843 because of the magic before you just say, oh, it's magic. There's magic here. And that's one of the problems I think I have, is that I'm reading it expecting a London of a certain era with certain mindsets. Yes, it's meant to be in an alternate London.
Yeah.
But but she set up that era by starting the first book in our London in a time frame that was expected of certain things. So you expect that mentality across the board.
This is one of the pitfalls, is that the world building of Red London, specifically in terms of the social aspects,
I found frustrating.
Yeah, it's not covered enough to explain why it is how it is, and how it is inconsistent with
the Crown Prince.
It's not like it would be okay if it was entirely inconsistent with the time period, because that would be explained as this is a different society operating on a different timeline.
But you establish that rule to start with. You don't start the world off with a certain establishment and then just go, oh no, that doesn't matter because it's in a different world.
Yeah. What becomes confusing is then when it cherry picks some elements of the time era and attitudes, but not others. And so this is where you get the confusing thing about like Alucard's family being homophobic, but Rye isn't expected to be married yet.
He did try to fix that, because right towards the end, when Alucard's talking to Cal, he says something along the lines of, yes, I'm ignoring what's happening behind me, and yes, Daddy is at work. He says something along the lines of, not all families are willing to oversee the prince's desires in there. You know, not all of them are open to those sorts of things. But that doesn't work for me, because I'm sorry, but yes, as a crown prince, they might allow him to have a consort of that nature. But why is his parents not turning around to him and saying, mate, you need to find a bride, because you need to breed an heir for our kingdom?
Was there any mention of it in book 2? I don't know. So this is the bit where it gets frustrating.
Well, there wasn't. There was only mention of his playboy attitude and him going off to bars and having relations with lots of people. And I'm sorry, but Crown Prince, you do not want multiple illegitimate children.
So there's this is where they really needed to,
in this world.
Like, this is one of the details where it would have been fine if they'd taken the time to delve into it and explain the social attitudes.
One line. He wore a magic amulet that made sure that he did not actually, made sure that nothing was going to shoot and hit.
Yeah. There's probably, so there's that element, but there's also, like, if they'd taken the time to explain what society's expectations are with at what age you come of age, at what age you're expected to take on responsibilities, at what age you're expected to get married.
Remember it, but the start of the first book,
because they have
what is it? It's London.
They don't say ages.
What is it? Is it London 1600s or something?
I think it's the 1790s or the 18 somethings. Let me look it up.
Because when I read the first couple of chapters, which is about him going to meet the old king, King George, I think it is.
Yeah.
That set an expectation in me of that era, that mentality. Royalty was all about lineage and keeping power in the lineage. And, and obviously you had the pirates down in the seas and stuff like that. So that made sense with Lila wanting to become a pirate. That made sense. Yeah. It makes sense that she dreamed that, but she didn't fucking become it. No talent calling herself that. The entire last 2 books drove me nuts. And I know she's definitely not going to become one, because she's going off in a ship that's now sanctioned by the kingdom with one of their princes on board. There's no fucking way she's going to be a pirate. I'm sorry.
So era-wise,
spoiler.
It must be 1819, I think.
Something. But yeah, But there was this expectation of that sort of era, that sort of mentality. And then you're getting okay, look, I understand Red London is an alternative London. They are got magic, which does fundamentally change society, but there's no explanation in what those changes are. So you've got this, Mark, if you do not go to sleep, I am putting you in your room. No.
They have, so something that I've seen, and I can't remember whether it's in the books or actually like outside commentary, and I have a feeling it's the latter, is that Red Worlders are more interested in power in I mean, Grey Worlders are also interested in power, but their power is through lineage, gender, all of those things, whereas in Red London, power is through magic. So that's
where that is a fundamental issue, that their crown prince does not have magic.
Yeah, which is an issue.
And no, it's not an issue. It's not an issue. It's an issue for the other kingdoms. One of the kingdoms even says, you shouldn't be crown prince because I don't have any magic and I can't be crown prince.
Yeah. So that one is set up as a difference between the different countries within that world.
Mm-hmm.
But
it is meant to be a difference.
It is of the world. So it's unusual for Rye to be the crown prince, but the setup is like vaguely justified as Red London being more progressive, or at least the crown being more progressive, even if the population doesn't agree.
I'm sorry, but if the population of a whole is believes in magic is power, it doesn't matter if he's crown prince or not. They will be putting pressure on the king to name his nephew or niece or whoever's next in line that has magic as the crown, as the next in line, because otherwise they're going to look, as this whole book says, they're going to look weak to their neighbors, and that could incite another war.
Well, yeah, and it does kind of happen. Like that is one of the consequences of Rye not having magic. And one of the other consequences of Rye not having magic is his desire to be a strong leader gives him this fatal flaw of that desire. And this isn't in this book, but it's like sort of carried over from this book, that you're dealing with the consequences of this, is that because he has the desire, he wants to be the best leader that he can, and he also subscribes to the belief that like magic is power, and that he doesn't have a lot of self-belief that he will be a good leader without having magic. And so he falls for several traps because of this.
But also too, my question is where did he get that from? If both his parents have raised him, no, you're the crown prince, you can just lead by example, you can be a good king. Why has he come up with that? Like, who gave that to him? Was it a teacher when he was a kid? Was it the fact that Kel is so powerful, he wants the same power? They don't really explain that, and that to me is an issue, because, to be honest, the entire motivation for him actually at the end of book 2 doing what he does and ending up, let's face it, a fucking zombie that just has the appearance of someone living. I mean, what happens to the bloodline now? Can he even breed an heir now? But he's still going to be king?
Really good question. That's actually a really good question.
That was my first question. When I realized what Cal had done at the end of book 2, that he had literally given Rise his life, shared his life with him, I went, well, Rise is technically dead. So how does this line go on? Why isn't Mummy and Daddy trying to do everything in their power to figure out how to heal their son so that they can figure out how to break this issue? And because, and the description of what happened to him so what happens is Kel's, right near the start, Kel's link to Rise gets broken.
Yeah.
And there's this moment where Rise is lying in bed. He's no longer got
pretty much
life
dies all over
force.
again.
Well, it pretty much just shows that without Kel, he's already dead.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
he dies again, he's already dead.
Yeah.
So, because he literally like turns into a corpse at several months. Oh, Mark! That's it. I'm gonna have to put this child to bed. Then settle. So the question there is, it's a few fundamental issues. One, everyone in that room would now be telling everyone they know what happened, because that's good for him.
Yeah,
That's
they're sworn to secrecy, but also there's no way they're keeping that a secret.
Well, Mum's dead anyway, so it doesn't matter. Dad's dead anyway, so that doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, it's just, I understand it's a lovely thing to have. Your brother sacrificed his life for you, but it just doesn't feel like, shouldn't Rise be abdicating?
Unexplained elements.
Shouldn't Rise abdicate and say, well, I'm going to go with Kel off into the sea and check things out and give it to some nephew that's never been named, but apparently they're there because Alucard was like, Alucard's sister was 23rd in line for the throne, so he must have been 22nd.
Something, yeah. For some reason, I thought it was like 12th.
No, I definitely remember it was in the 20s. I definitely remember it was mentioned that the sister was in the 20s. But
so there's inconsistencies. It's sort of like, the trouble is like it's hinted at for answers to a lot of these things, but you need more specific detail for it not to be like, this doesn't make sense.
And
so
that's
sort of hinted at that, like they're a bit more progressive, and that because Raya is an only child, he is the one to inherit, because Kel's adopted, so he's not going to inherit. But like, they don't give any justification for why your adopted
son. Why aren't the politicians saying, look at your adopted son, why can't he become king?
Yeah, and here's the other thing is that, like, this is one of my other major annoyances with the series, is just the parents.
Oh,
so logical fallacies aside, just their whole attitude pisses me off. And I know it's done deliberately, and I know it's like deliberately to show like the dysfunctional family and the relationships and whatever. And I can also see that it's done so that you avoid the trope of dead parents for YA.
No. This is the one case where I would have embraced the trope of dead parents at the start of book one, because I think it would have been far more fascinating to watch Kel, Rise, Alucard, and Bard have to sort out the mess that's left behind after Mummy and Daddy died.
Imagine if the King and Queen had been assassinated at the beginning of book one by the White London people.
Cut out everything except for that last bit of the third book where Daddy goes out and sacrifices himself, and Mum dies from the assassination. Dad goes out and sacrifices himself because this thing that thinks it's a god thinks, oh, I have problems with the bad guy people.
Yeah.
And that's the catalyst for the start of the trilogy.
Well, that might be the next trilogy. Because the next trilogy is like, I'm not sure how far after it's set. It's following like different characters.
Or yeah.
It's I think it's a couple years later.
Oh,
so that could be one of the reasons this one is so much longer, because they've got all of the new characters in their stories, and then they're delving into this.
She hasn't explained the characters she's got. Like, why put new people in? I'm sorry. Look, okay, guys, I enjoyed this book to a degree, okay?
Yeah.
But the problem... You all right? Come on, lie down, get some sleep. But the problem is she does these, like, okay, the point I'm talking about, which I'm saying would be a great catalyst, is, okay, let's look at this scenario. We have Kel go to Grey London, does the setup there, gets the stone, goes to White London, gets that stone. Everything happens as per the first book, except the stone is this is the bad guy from book 3.
Yeah.
So all the shit so you cut out all that crap about the bloody contest that means absolutely nothing except to show how good Leela Bard is at learning shit.
It's the fun and games part of this Save the Cat plot.
Fucking useless. And
but like as the whole story, it's the funny.
If you want to show how good someone is at learning how to do things on the fly, you throw them into real life issues and make them learn because their life's in danger. You don't just go, let's have a competition. But this guy, this godling, I'm going to call it a godling because I don't think it's a god.
Yeah.
I have my reasons for that, guys.
Piece of magic that's sort of
takes over Red London as per book 3, kills the king and queen, and then you have Rise, Alucard, Bard, who's from Grey London and has no idea what the fuck's going on, and Cal having to sort it. That to me is a far more compelling setup and issue for a 3-book series than effectively, to me, the first book felt like a one-off. Then the second book felt like it was written because they came back and said, the first book sold really well. We need you to write a second book. And they did, and she didn't have enough time to actually thoroughly think about what the plot line was. So we just ended up with this pseudo political situation that gets thrown out the window at the start of book 3 because we have a godling turn up. That's where she hits her stride.
Yeah.
It
kind of reads like a book that was written as an open-ended standalone with
which I have no problem with. Altered Carbon was an open-ended standalone.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately,
same thing happened with Richard Morgan. Really fucked up its book 2, so
exactly. And that's exactly what I was going to say. Is that's one of my favorite science fiction series of all time, and there are so many problems with book 2. It's ridiculous. Okay, let's face it. The main problem we have with book 2 when it comes to Broken Angels is the fact that you have to remember one fucking line in the first, in the prologue, I think it's even in. Then that makes sense in why he's doing what he's doing and how and why. But
and if you don't even notice it,
you got a problem.
I would say the one line isn't even substantial enough.
No, and I'm pretty sure it's in the prologue too. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. And I think this is what book 2 was here. This book, it didn't have long enough to marinate.
Yeah.
It's very well written. It's got a good plot in and on itself, but when you're looking at it in the series, it just, you could have cut 98% out of that book and moved things around a little bit and put them into book 3 and had a duology, and it still would have made sense.
Yeah. I think there's it's a really enjoyable series and I still recommend it, but the bits where it trips up is in its world building, timelines, and its logic.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's inherently bad, it's just that there's enough little missed dropped threads that you just want it to be that next level better.
Yes. Yeah, well, you want it to be, and that's it. You're invested enough in the characters to want it to be a good book. And that's what frustrated me most of all, is because I think I said it during book club for the second book, is I was trusting her to come to a reason to have all this shit in book 2. And she had a reason, but it just didn't feel strong enough. It just
It's
Hey guys, I'm tired. So tired.
Let's get to some specifics.
Protagonists come and go and go and come, and always too soon. 10 points to whoever knows what that's referencing. Oh,
Why is this stupid thing always running out of space?
yes. Stars? Do you want your stars?
No, doors.
Close your eyes.
Trying to pull up a pattern for my knitting, and the stupid
No, that's all right.
thing has
Doors.
Does Mummy have to go drag you into your room?
Mama, doors.
You're not getting toast. Stop kicking.
Doors.
Mark. He's trying to keep himself awake. He's so tired. And we've got to go out tomorrow.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow is a big day all around by the sound of
Yeah,
things.
so look, if you okay, let's discuss the characters.
Let's put it this way: if you enjoy Sarah J. Maas, you're going to enjoy this so much more.
No, I wouldn't even put them in the same ballpark, because Sarah J.
Yeah.
Maas got about a third of the way through Court of Thorns and whatever it's called, and I threw it, and I returned it to Audible and said, this is not what I signed up for. And this one I will keep them as an audiobook, but I will not purchase the physical. Like, they're not, I didn't enjoy them enough to have physicals on hand, if that makes sense.
I've got the physicals because I really liked them the first time through, and I was like, yeah, I want a set of these. So I quite like Schwab's writing. I really enjoy reading
your writing. Yeah,
despite
and like
the logic holdings. But like, as you said, like we're doing the book club partly
to pick it apart.
as, like,
I mean,
to...
that's not a reflection on how bad. If we do Lord of the Rings, I'll pick the shit out of Lord of the Rings. Trust me on that. And that's one of my favorite all-time books. So
yeah, exactly. What the fuck is...
And it's all subjective too. The things I find frustrating, not everyone finds frustrating, and it's just the same with books. The things I love, people won't like. So
yeah. And like, so I'm in the ballpark of like, I notice it, and I think second read is where it gets like a little bit more annoying, because it starts to get sort of like, yeah, okay, I'm noticing the issues a bit more. But like, I'm in the ballpark generally of like, it doesn't bother me that much as long as I'm enjoying the story as a whole. Like, I'm happy to just sort of like read it and enjoy it. But on the same level, when I'm writing my own stuff, this is all the shit that I'm figuring out before it gets to the point. And like, part of that is having the luxury of time, because I'm not on a deadline as a
it's like, like I had someone who was one of my workshopping crew, when they were reading Descent, she all of a sudden went, oh shit, I didn't realize your characters were that old. And I went, what do you mean? She goes, oh, well, okay, for reference sake, God, now my brains, I aged my characters up quite a lot. But Eric in Descent is 64. Okay. But we're talking a world where people live to 350 on a regular basis. So 64 ain't actually that old. But it's long enough to actually have life experience without having to, without all that stuff. When my problem with the ages in this book was they just felt like they were acting and reacting as intelligent, mature 16 to 18-year-olds. Like, I'm not saying they were immature in their actions. It just, their actions just did not correspond to me with adults, which
which is where the issue lies. Yeah,
which is where my fundamental issue lies with YA as a whole, because I don't, as someone who grew up before YA was even invented, I don't see the need to cater to that kind of age group anyway, because, you know, when I was growing up, I was reading Tad Williams. I was reading Robert Jordan. I was reading, I'm trying to think of all the other YA, all the other adulters. Adulters. But, you know, like, I was reading those books, and it didn't matter that some of the themes were above my head, because they were above my head. I go back, reread them now, and I see those themes, but I didn't necessarily understand them when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
You didn't need something dumbed down, is what I think I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons for the ages in this is to justify the romance elements, like the romantic relationships. And yeah, we've got another Renee rant coming on, on some of those. So here's something that I had the thought. So this is what it feels like to me specifically. It feels like they've gone with the setting of 1819 for the aesthetic, and so that the non-magic world doesn't have advanced technology yet, because it's still in the sort of steam. It's pre-computers. There's no computerized anything. It's on the sort of cusp of a lot of technology. However, it doesn't correspond with the other worlds. White London is its own ball game. That's a very, very different sort of thing. But Red London is the one where you get the most detail, and it feels like they've put 20th century, 21st century attitudes into a early 19th century setting.
Yes, which is a problem for me.
But they don't justify it enough with the world building that's provided. So
I have no problem with the mentality in the setting. I just want to see the world building that justifies that. And it can be one line. 200 years earlier, there was a king that decided this or something, and then obviously over 200 years they've worked it all out or whatever. But, you know, it doesn't have to be
historical context in Red London for the current society that is operational.
Yes. Yeah, because the historical context I have is Grey London.
Yeah. So that's where the main issues come from, is this sort of mix up of time eras and stuff. And there's also similar issues in Addie as well with the time setting of that. It just feels like they need more research or something into what the 17th, 18th, 19th century society stuff was.
Well, look,
these people wouldn't have existed within that society, but they need to contextualize them within the society that you know.
Well, you know what would have worked for me with Addie? Yeah. Okay, this is what would have worked with me with Addie. Is she got married off young to maybe someone she really liked, and he died of plague. Then, as a widower, she ends up back with her parents because she's still technically only like 16 or something. And then it took them till she was around about 21 for them to find her a new match, because one, she would have the stigma of her original husband dying of the plague or whatever it was, or some disease. She would have the stigma of that. And she's also not a rich family. So obviously that wouldn't have, you know, it would have been hard there. That would have made sense to me. She still could have been childless. She still could have been, you know, everything, you know, because let's face it, in Addie, she's not exactly worried about keeping herself pure. So that's not an issue. She could have been married off young to maybe the local blacksmith or something, someone she grew up with and really liked. Could have been the love of her life. And when he died, she didn't want to get married again. which would
Yeah.
make more sense to me than a family who is not rich, not palming their daughter off to the first guy that actually said he wanted to get married to her.
And this is an issue consistently across multiple works now.
It is.
And it's
because everyone's trying to put
specifically around like the parents, the marriage, that whole thing for the time
Yes.
era.
Yes.
So this is where the issue of Rye comes up in this series as well, and like the
Mhm.
lineage and inheritance and everything. It's an area that's like it's not justified well enough.
Yes.
And it's too modern for the era that it's set in without justification.
Addie doesn't work because she is purely in our world.
Yeah.
There are elements that, if they were explained properly, would make so much more sense, and this would be perfect. This would be fine. But it's just not explained. Like, it could very well, she might very well have 100, have all the reasons written down somewhere. But because they're not in the book, they don't exist.
Yeah.
And it's I'm just trying to yes. Time is one issue. Shall we talk about the characters individually?
Yes. So before we get into Lila as well, we were having this conversation at the same time, somewhere in the same period of time. I was watching a video essay on a character from Doctor Who called Clara, who was a companion.
I haven't watched that one yet. The Problem with Clara video essay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's from a channel that I really like called Council of Geeks.
I haven't watched that one yet.
Anyway, that also gave me several thoughts, because the issue with Clara is that, well, like, it's actually, how many rows do I need to undo this? One.
She's got several different problems, old Clara.
Clara's got several problems. The main thing is that in the first series that she's in, she's used as a plot device instead of a character, and isn't developed as a character.
That's her first appearance, yes.
Yeah, that's her first issue.
Which is brilliant. As a story, an individual story, that one is brilliant.
So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Hang on, no, that's not the first one. The Dalek one, that's not the first one.
The first Dalek one is the first one, and then the Snowman. So the Dalek one is final. It's one of the episodes in the end of season 6.
Yeah.
With Amy and Rory, and then she reappears either the next episode, which is the Christmas special, or a couple of episodes later, which is the Christmas special.
The Christmas, yeah, okay. I was trying to get. Yeah.
In the Dalek episode, she's Oswin Oswald. In the Snowman, she's Clara. And at the end of the episode, she dies. In both episodes, she dies at the end. And when she's buried at the end, they bury the nanny. The grave says Clara Oswin Oswald. And that's when he realizes that it's the same person. And then he runs into her in modern day London. And she's just so fucking bland as a character. Like, she has no real character development, like nothing really.
She's not bland in the first one. In the first one, she shows hints of having a very good, like, background style character, because her background's not important. It's the situation that's important for her in that Dalek one. And let's face it, we all love it when we get to see the old ballistic Dalek. But yeah, I haven't even watched any of her.
More interesting character development and more interesting characterization in those two first introduction episodes than in the episode that introduced her as a regular companion. And then when she's introduced as a regular companion, she doesn't have any of that.
Yeah.
And the entire thing is just like, ooh, mystery girl. And it's a plot device. And it's a brilliant plot device. But if in that episode or in the first couple of episodes she'd actually gotten some sort of character development that made you really interested in her as a person that wasn't just vague bullshit, it would have been a lot more engaging. So
it's like, I'm not a fan of Rose. I don't like Rose very much, but she had character development. She, all through her storylines, she, you know, she had things about her family. She had things about, you know, her, you know, what she was, who she, you know, what she was becoming, all those sorts of little things. My favorite companion of the Doctor Who series is Donna.
Donna Noble, yeah,
I think
brilliant.
She has the best storyline of all the companions.
She really does. She's coming back. Her and Ten are back in the new era, like the new Russell T Davies era. Have you seen that news? I'm guessing not.
No. Because I pretty much stopped watching after Donna died, because I was just like, oh, she didn't really die.
She didn't die. She
I love Donna. I thought that was the most, like, the accumulation of her character for who she is and what she always told the Doctor. Like, you know, she gave him a human side, and for her to actually end up the way she, and I'm just like, when they took her the memories, like, no, don't.
Yeah. So the great thing about Donna's character and why it's such a powerful storyline is that they gave her a happy ending character fate that was worse than death.
Yes.
So on the one hand, it's a happy ending. On the other hand, the amount of like grief for the audience and for like the Doctor of her going back to how she was before she met him, or she will die, was just that was brilliant writing. That was a brilliant.
It was the epitome of a tragedy. It was perfect.
Oh yeah. Anyway, the other issue, the other great thing about, so Clara, then you get actual character development in series 8 and series 9, which are the better two series of her character, and you have a much more interesting relationship with her and 12 than you did with her and 11.
Oh yeah.
But one of the problems is that the show is sort of characterizing her as if you like her and as if she's automatically a good person, but the actions she's doing and the stuff that she does
is problematic,
is not necessarily good stuff. Like, she's lying to like her partner and to the Doctor. She has a really great fatal flaw, but she's portrayed in like a way where the way the narrative is portraying her does not line up with the actual characterization. And that's where you get the sort of love-hate like extremes in the fandom with that character, because there's not a lot of ambivalent people about Clara. They either really like her or really hate her. And I think it's because of these issues. It's like she's controversial in those ways because the people who don't like her are like, this is just a horrible person, and also she didn't get any character development, so we don't care. Anyway, the thing that was interesting about this is that they mentioned her in regard to the idea of Mary Sue, and we'd been talking about Mary Sue in regard to Lila Bard. And there is an element of the idea of Mary Sue where it's the self-insert character. And that was where this video commentary was like, well, I don't consider this really a Mary Sue because it's not a self-insert. It's an underdeveloped, overpowered character. And I think it's similar to Lila. I think she's not quite the sort of self-insert necessarily, but she's overpowered, and she's too good at too many things, and the failings that she has aren't big enough for the amount of
power,
character power leap.
Yes. She also doesn't have much character development because she keeps thinking she's a pirate when she's not.
Yeah. See, that bothered you more than it bothered me, but I just find it kind of amusing. But
I'm just like, someone get that woman a copy of Pirate Woman, for Christ's fucking sake. Leela, this is a pirate. You're not one of them.
Yeah, indeed. So I've got this issue where I should have changed this bit that's on a crochet needle to the brown, and I did not. So now I have to work out. I think I just need some other needles. Have I got any other needles?
Cheese.
Pencil.
You can get cheese, but where's your pen? Go get your pen, please.
The problem with Lila. Lila's a great character. I really enjoy her as a character. But yeah, she's not a pirate, although she is the most like morally grey.
I'm sorry, but she's egotistical, has absolutely no fucking clue what's going on, yet still thinks that she can just, flounce through life. And, well, let's face it, she's got plot protection, so she does.
Plot armor. That's one.
Plot,
that's
she's
what's
got so much plot, Mark.
She's got too much plot armor, and
don't care.
Yeah, it sort of becomes more and more of an issue because she's doing stuff and making choices and making decisions that she should be dead.
Yeah, well, look, I'll be honest. I know a certain amount of my characters have plot armor, particularly in Descent, because I've written Descent after I wrote the original novel, which is, the drafts of the novel. So the characters in Descent actually have to survive. Yeah. So I do understand the issue, but I just... I don't know what it is about her that bugs me so much. I really don't. I think my problem is I just felt that she could have been such a fantastic character. And I felt that this need for her to be able to do everything so well, just like, okay, spoiler alert, she's an Atari. Because, oh my God, she lost her eye when she was a child and she doesn't know how she lost it, but she's got a fake eye that no one can tell she's got a fake eye. That's like a few very observant people.
It's like well foreshadowed, but by the time it's actually revealed, it's already so fucking obvious. Like it could have, I think that the issue with that is that should have been revealed a lot earlier.
Yeah.
But, and that would have actually helped to justify some elements of the learning so quickly.
There's this great let's using movies and a movie I really hate as an example. The Star Wars episodes 1 and 1.
Oh God.
Okay. No, because I hate the first. There's 1, 2, and 3.
I got like 10 minutes in and had to stop because I was in such like disbelief that I needed to record my disbelief, and I was just like, "What the fuck is this?"
But the one element I want to take from this movie, as loosely using that terminology, is there's a point at the end where they're assessing Anakin, and they decide he's too old and shouldn't be trained.
Yeah,
and I like that idea, and I like the fact that, Qui-Gon said, oh, I'll train him, even if I have to go against the council, I'll train him. Okay, that's all fine. But I would have really liked to have seen some problems with him learning to control the Force because they had started so late with him. That's what I would have liked to see with Lila. She could have been tremendously powerful. Just pure raw power. But the fact that she was so old when she discovered what she was and had to learn to control it. Sorry, I have a child that is refusing to settle. Get down. Come here.
Yeah, I think that would have been really, really interesting if they'd explored it like that way.
At the end of everything, the way they resolve it is the 3 Atari link their powers. Okay, so they link their powers, and one of them uses all of their power to destroy this godling. See, I'm still calling it a godling. I have reasons. But the thing that I would have, she didn't need to have control to be useful in that situation. So she has been struggling to learn her magic through all 3 books, trying to get over the issues of the fact that she grew up in a world that doesn't have magic. So to her, in her head is, oh, this is amazing, this is new, this is all fantastic. But there's still that subconscious of this shouldn't be real affecting her all the way through. She would have felt like a much more believable character to me.
Yeah. But this is a really good point, because it's not so much the level of power that's the issue, it's the level of control
and ease.
Because you see her struggling with it at the beginning of, like, in the in-between, and like a bit of book 2. But like then there's just sort of like, it's like it forgets about that halfway through.
Yes.
And the only thing that you get, so instead of a struggle for control, it's her overusing it and like not knowing her limits and like having a blood nose from it or whatever and straining.
Okay. It's her overusing it, so she swoons and gets caught by Cal.
Which is one way of showing struggles for control, but a more interesting way of showing struggle for control is when she's using fucking fire all the time. Like,
burn
that's
yourself,
the perfect
honey.
opportunity for fire to just go, and then she's trying to like pull it back down and accidentally burns a heap of shit to the ground.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, and by the time she gets it out, she's already burnt down half the mast or whatever.
Yeah.
That would be a lot more interesting.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I love me a good nosebleed when it comes to someone overexerting themselves. But I prefer that in someone that's actually had years of practice and control.
Yeah.
So an Alucard overexerts. Okay, she loses it. Fire goes everywhere. Alucard steps in, uses his powers to stop it. He gets the nosebleed. She passes out. That would make sense to me. What? I don't care that you're eating cheese.
I decided to like unpick instead of modifying the pattern, and it's so tedious.
Yeah, so like as I said, I don't hate it, but I think that's one of my main problems with her is that she's very powerful, can accept that. You know, there's so many books out there that have, you know, for lack of a better word, a one style trope thing where, you know, they have all the power, but they don't always know how to control it properly, you know. Yeah.
I think that's like the main issue. The issue isn't the power, it's the control of the power.
Yeah. And it's the fact that she just accepts everything so quickly. You know, look, which is great to have that kind of growth mindset. Don't get me wrong. But she grew up in a very controlling style society, particularly for a female. Yes, she's a rogue. She's a rogue of society, not just necessarily a thief, but a rogue of society. She doesn't believe the same things as her society, but she would still have the perception of it in her head. She'd be fighting herself constantly over certain things. You know, look, and okay, Red London's woke. Let's accept Red London's woke. They have no problem with the prince being what he is. She's not from Red London.
Yeah.
And she can accept him. That's fine. There's no issue there. But there's not even an inkling in her head.
So this I don't have as much of an issue with, because Schwab said that like none of her characters are canonically straight unless specifically said to be. So Lila is hinted at being canonically bi or pan or something like that. So that would make more sense. There's not much.
But my problem with that is it's never shown.
Yeah, not yet. I feel like it's probably going to come out more in the next series.
See, I've got no problem with the different orientations. That's not an issue. But
Yeah.
in my head, okay, it says it's great for the author to say canonically, this is what my world is.
Yeah.
But you gotta show it.
Yes.
And
yeah.
And if you hadn't have told me that, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, and like it's the sort of thing where I wouldn't have been surprised if it showed up in later books, but it's also not something that I would have gone.
But she's never
read this
even
book
shown an
because
inkling.
canonically
Like
by
she's
main
never
character.
even. But she's never even looked at a woman twice. This is the problem I have. Okay, the lady that helps her in the market. I mean, there's not even a she could have done like one or two sentences in that would have just made you go, oh yeah, okay, cool, she's bi. No worries, cool, done. You know.
One of the other troubles with this book is there's not actually a lot of other women.
No.
In the cast that
Nope.
would be potential options for Lila in order to explore that, because she's on an entirely male crew disguised as a man for most of it. And this is where the world building starts to irritate. This is where the world building starts to irritate me, because it's like it's 21st century, let's put all the woke society in this one. Yeah, there's still a couple of homophobic people, whatever. But it's still hugely patriarchal.
Which is the problem.
Which doesn't make sense if it's like
if everyone is okay. So if you take what V.E.Schwab said about all of her characters, which I would say is everybody in the world,
yeah,
is think more bi or whatever than straight.
Yeah,
and that fundamentally changes the world. That also changes your perception on inheritance.
Perception of the what, sorry?
On inheritance.
Yeah.
Because how do you have a world of inheritance when you may very well have a daughter and a son who bat for the other side, for lack of a better expression, and end up with no grandchildren?
Yeah, and it's an underdeveloped area of the world building that I'm really hoping it comes out in the next book.
Okay, I'll be generous. Or it means adoptive is truly adoptive.
Yeah.
So if you have a child and they end up, in a same-sex marriage and they adopt a child, that child becomes your heir.
Yeah. And
in which case Nicole would be an heir.
That then causes that would then cause like the rivalry or like the potential for Kel to inherit.
That would actually make more fucking sense
than the actual legitimate.
But that would actually make more sense to me.
And that's where it has sort of like has some issues.
But that to me, if that was the situation, okay, that's the world. They accept bis pretty much everywhere. You have this situation where if you do adopt a child and raise them as your own, then they are a legitimate heir of your line because you might not get them any other way. Then the issue between Rise not having magic and Kel being an Atari becomes a shitload more interesting to me.
Yeah. And that would have been a really interesting relationship with the parents.
Because they generally would have, and then you also have the issue with the parents who are apparently woke, but then have the issue that their adoptive son might inherit over the top of their natural born son.
Yeah.
That actually would be a very interesting conversation. And rather rather than Cal's adoptiveness literally being the cage, because I still call him a slave. He was a
It
slave.
really is. Yeah, and that's what kind of bothers me about the parents, is that like they're supposedly in this sort of like they're just like they don't make
What
sense.
they need to be in each scene rather than being consistent across the board. That's the problem. They're cardboard cutouts that change their color depending on what they need to be on the day.
Yeah, and it's like, so they're woke on some areas, but then they're like treating Kel like a slave, and then they
have absolutely no concerns about it.
Yeah. It's kind of annoying. I need one more row. Okay. Look how much shit I have on this at the moment. Because I missed 5 rows. But it started out as like the middle bit, and then it expanded out, and it's taking them down 1 row and 1 for like a few bits, then 2 more rows for a few bits, and then 2 more rows for the last few bits. And it's just
yeah. So it's sort of that is probably my biggest issue with the parents, is they've raised him as a slave. He's a slave.
Yeah.
He's a slave to the family. And then they get all up in arms when Kel decides to do something against their will, because he's actually he's a human.
They don't listen. They externalize all of the blame away from themselves
and away from their natural born son.
Yeah, and then they won't
do no wrong.
And then, like, it's a big deal when they die.
You know what? The most personality
has their issues and whatever, and they're sort of like they become more It feels like they become more sympathetic in the 3rd book when you get their points of view, just so that you care more when they get killed off.
Which is why I was saying earlier that if you had that section near the start of the first book, yes, okay, you've got the absent parents, but it would make them far more sympathetic to me than, like, to be honest, I'm kind of relying on the comic book series, The Steel Prince, to actually make me feel any sympathy for him at all.
Yeah. And I had the same thought.
I've got the first one. I haven't read it yet. I was waiting till I finished this series. It's a comic. I'll read it in like 10 minutes. But I'm just like, and I'm going to read it, and I'm probably going to enjoy it more because it sounds like it's more my speed. He's down in the trenches actually fighting, not just simpering around in the bloody palace. But his character, the king's character, to me became interesting the minute he decided to use the magic to do what he did to try to save his kingdom. Everything up to that point was a waste of words.
Yeah.
And her mum became they fridged mum. Oh
yeah, they fridged her, but her entire development up until that
getting interesting. We found out what her power was. Her power was really, I thought, she's going to use her power somehow with the priests and figure out how to get people back. No, they just killed her.
Yeah. So,
but she had a really interesting power. Something that I thought would come in really handy in fighting what is effectively a piece of magic. Anyway, shall we talk about the bad guy?
This way. Don't mind me. I'm just trying to work out which way I'm supposed to be knitting.
No,
I
that's
think
right.
I'm going the right way. Talk about the what? Sorry.
The bad guy, the
Bad
big
guy.
bad evil.
The big bad evil is kind of just like big bad evil.
Okay, so the first book, the big bad evil, was a piece of rock.
Yeah.
Okay, technically not a piece of rock. It was a piece of rock where like a consciousness of magic had attached itself to, and that consciousness took over people and was just it just took over people, didn't it? It didn't actually eat the magic like this one did. I can't remember now. Anyway, so when they defeated that one at the end of book one, and oh god, I'm blanking on his name, the other Atari.
Holland. Holland is one of the most interesting characters, and the most.
Holland is so interesting.
Holland is one of the only characters that doesn't have any inconsistencies.
Yes.
His power is consistent and justified. His morals are consistent and justified. His gets
actions are consistent.
Yeah. And becomes sympathetic because you see that
I always sympathize with Holland. Even in book one, when he was the big bad running around killing people, it's because he had no choice. You knew from the minute you met him that he truly was a slave. And this is what I liked about the Holland versus Cal thing is, and this is why I do like how Cal has a lot of sympathy for him, because I think Cal sees what could have been him in Holland.
And he even says that.
Yeah.
He says that to Lila. Lila is like, on the one level, I get it. And I think it's like one of the least irritating things that she does, that's because it is actually justified. But like, it highlights her lack of objectivity in the way that she reacts to Holland.
I just think she's a simpering little teenager that needs to get her head out of her own ass, to be honest. Look,
She does have that downfall.
Holland killed the man that practically raised her. Okay, I understand.
He kills his father figure.
But with everything that happens, she's not once sat back and gone, well, he did it, but yeah, the magic was kind of compelling him to do it. So really, I should be getting pissed at Astrid and getting pissed at the twins, not him. That's the problem. She focuses so much on the person that did the act and not the reasons behind it.
For the act.
And the person's ultimately responsible, because I got the feeling that if Holland wasn't actually the slave that he really was, he would have been just like Cal.
Yeah.
But because and this is the problem I have with her mentality, that she's so accepting of some things, but then she shows that true sort of stuck in nature personality for others. Which if she had that true stuck in nature that she couldn't change a lot or couldn't see past, you killed that man, so you're at fault, rather than hang on, there were other things at play here. I think that would have made a very interesting struggle for her to learn to control magic, which is fundamentally something she's got no experience with. But anyway, so Holland gets sent to Black London at the end of book one, and he's dying. He's had a knife in the chest, and then he meets a creature called a creature in Black London that heals him, allows him to gets him help to get home, and is helping him revitalize White London with magic. Now the problems start occurring when Holland realizes that this creature is not going to stop at revitalizing White London, it is going to consume everything.
It's going to consume everything, pretty much. Yeah.
And so what he tries to do is this is all in book 2. He concocts a plan to get Cal to come to White London and try to convince Cal to take possession of this thing.
Yeah.
So he will be free. And then so they sort of convince Cal to come. Cal gets there wanting to help. Confronted by Holland, he realizes what's going on, and he says, "No, you can't access. You can't have me."
Mm.
So then the deal Holland makes with him is you can have control if Cal. What a most stupid deal, though. I'm sorry, but Holland's smarter than that.
Yeah.
And so then this creature, I can't even think of what he called himself,
Goes
to Red London and starts taking over bodies, taking over people, just effectively just spreading his magic everywhere.
Yeah.
Eating Red London's magic. So I've got a few problems with him. One, they describe him at one point as effectively being a creature of entropy.
Mm.
So the whole idea is that he's chaos that then becomes entropy, which is why there's parts of Red London that turn to like a black glassy stone, because everything's stopped. And this is something that's explored in one of the Final Fantasies, is chaos and entropy. It always wants to stop and die. And
yeah.
And so they cook up this plan. They realize Holland's helping them at this point, but oh no, we don't trust him, so he's going to just hang around in a collar. Anyway, because God forbid him actually, wanted to do the right thing and just fucked it up royally.
Well, he did make the sort of decision to sacrifice Red London to try and save White, which on that level, you're like, yeah, I understand their hesitancy. But at the same time, his decisions are justified because from his perspective as a White London, that's exactly what they did to White London.
Well, I was going to say, what would have Red London done?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he sends Osran over. Yeah. But that's all, and then so they're cleaning up the mess in book 3 rather.
Look at this. Look at this.
Finally passed out.
Yeah, so okay. What did you think of the big bad?
I don't really have any strong opinions either way. Like, there were some points where I was like, I kind of just want to see what this world would be like without some massive magical. It was like the opposite of the Deus Ex Machina in terms of villain.
Yeah. I've got a few problems with him. One, they describe him quite regularly as a piece of magic.
Yeah.
Which, in and of itself, I don't mind. Then they go on to qualify that by saying he is magic that's effectively become personified.
Yeah.
Which also don't have a real big problem with. My problem hits is when you get in his head and you got his perspective and he keeps calling himself a fucking god.
Well, they do say that he thinks he's like, He has a god complex.
He has a god complex. That's
And
fine.
because
I can
people
understand
have
that.
started to like refer to him as a god, he starts referring to himself as a god even more. So he starts out thinking he's as powerful as a god and should be worshipped like that.
Mm.
And it sort of just escalates to the point where he's like, I'm a fucking god, deal with me.
No. He still requires a body to walk around in. He's not a god. But
Well, he doesn't. That's like their whole psychological manipulation is trying to like make him think that he needs a body to be a king, which is kind of
that's it. Sorry, he goes on about being a god and then gets obsessed with becoming a king. Sorry, it's the king part that annoyed me. He's meant to be a god. He's meant to be a god. He's meant to think himself a god, yet he gets obsessed with being a king. And it's like, no.
That kind of annoyed me as well, because it's like,
let in your king. No. If I was saying let in your savior, let in your God, it wouldn't have been an issue. But it was all about like, and I understand what they did. I understand how they like did it to manipulate him into thinking he needed a body. That was all fine. I didn't have a problem with that. It was just that this being, this super powerful, and he was fully aware of who and what he was. So he knew he'd been born out of magic. Yet he became so obsessed with becoming the next king. It seems silly.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I can see why it's there, because if it's not there, how the fuck are they gonna win?
Yeah, but that's it. Isn't that the beauty of it? Is trying to figure it out.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's where it's like, I would have liked to see.
That's where I would have liked to have seen this creature born out of that stone, rather than the first book just being that standalone stone thing. Have this creature be what's in the stone.
Yeah.
And that sort of complication of they think, they kill Holland, but he's with the stone, so the stone protects him and saves him. And then, it just compounds issue upon issue. My problem is yes, I know Cal sent him to Black London to die, but it's not Cal's fault that Holland brought something back. Yet Cal said I was like, well, no. But if this creature was linked to the original stone that Cal brought across the Londons, then I would have gone, yes, I like how Cal has some guilt here. That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, I made this job way too complicated for myself.
We're at 10 o'clock. We're getting close.
Let's. One thing we haven't talked about yet is Alucard. Let's just limit it to the. It's not really limiting it. Like the core issues for Alucard is a fucking great character.
Well, he's a brilliant character. The problem is that his timeline's screwed.
However, some of the things that make him brilliant are not well enough justified.
Correct. That's the problem.
So you can still enjoy it, and he's legitimately still my favorite character. However, the issues, and like I really enjoy his backstory and stuff, and there is elements where if you just had a couple of extra lines, it would be totally fine. And to be fair, the details that aren't there are not there at all. So there's still room to retcon and fix it and fill it in.
But I feel like you shouldn't have to.
Opportunity, and you really should have in this book.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
See, the problem with Alucard for me is that you've got to run on the belief. Okay, so these books are traditionally published.
Yeah.
So there was never a guarantee that there would be a sequel.
Yeah.
So if you don't justify it, okay, you can leave things open-ended because life's messy. You can't knot everything up at the end of a book nice and neatly into a pretty braid. There's going to be messy stuff at the end of every novel, series, whatever, short story, doesn't matter. But there's not enough in my head to justify Alucard.
Yeah. So the main issues come with. So I read. There's also a short story called. I can't remember what it's called actually, but there's a short story from his point of view about his and Rai's relationship that you get the details in this book. I realized you get the details in this book towards, like, not till right at the end, which is
it's about 2/3 of the way in.
You get a little bit. I can't even remember. You do get
you get it pretty much when Alucard goes back to his not the first time he goes back, when all shit hits the fan and he leaves to go find his sister. You pretty much get it all then because he fights with his brother.
Yeah. You get it then, and then you get another flashback to it right at the end when he shows Rai. He trades 4 years of his life for the magical item that.
Oh, we got to talk about that one too. But he also tells Cal. He also tells Cal. So he gets, you get it from his head when he's fighting his brother. You get it from him telling Cal when they're just about to leave on their journey to go find the magical item that saves the day, the MacGuffin. Let's not go there. We'll be here all night if you start talking about that one. And then he says it again when he actually shows Rai, which is fine. But I think it would have been nice to have it all remained a mystery until right at the end. Because that would have made more sense to me that Cal still insists on hating him. Because once Cal finds out why he left and the manner of how he left, the whole reason Cal had for hating him is gone. He hates him because he abandoned his brother. Well, I didn't really abandon him. I was like literally had a broken arm, broken ribs, and I was tossed up and chucked on a ship.
Yeah. Oh God, this is so complicated. Yeah. So there's a little too much miscommunication.
Yes.
In order to further the plot.
Yeah. Remember those issues in YA stories where if you just had a fucking conversation?
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. It's not terrible. The bit where it gets the most like that is where it is actually in this book, and it's where he is trying to tell Rai, and Rai says, "No, fuck you. If you still love me, come and do it in front of the entire court when this is over." And so
he does.
That basically just means that then they don't get their, like, those two characters are then separated until the very end of the book.
And also, too, it sets up the MacGuffins. Okay, so they jump on a boat because they're off to find this. They realize that this thing is made of magic, so they really need something that can contain magic to trap it. So they decide to find this item that effectively can trap magic from one person and give it to another.
Yeah. Now, which was designed as a form of inheritance to inherit power as well as wealth.
Yes. But they never actually justify to me whether or not the magic is permanently handed over or if it is something that you continually have to wear for the rest of your life. I'd be very interested to know.
I think it's you put your power into it. So it's permanently in there, and once you put it in, you lose it.
Yes, but the person that takes it out, do they get to keep it or do they have to keep it around their neck as like a necklace for the rest of their life to use it? or does
No, I
it
think they
improve
take
in
it all
in?
out. I think it's a like in and then all out sort of thing.
Okay.
The reason
see,
she
I
was
never got
wearing it as a the reason the person is wearing it at one point, I don't think is to use it. I think it's just
No, I'm thinking more along the lines of the issue with Rise and how Dad was looking at trying to make one of these. But
Yeah.
the problem I have is it truly a transference, or is it literally not a borrowing, as in because the person loses their magic, but the person they've given it, do they get the magic, or does the magic stay in the item and they just get to use the magic? That's what I didn't know. Anyway, but so they go on this quest
to get the item
of a whole 3 days to find this trading center that I have 2 issues with. The first issue is you never hear about this trade center until it's needed.
Until it's conveniently needed.
Plot device. And secondly, why didn't they just use the market that was at the start of book 2?
Assassin Roast one?
Okay. When they first land, when they first land at Sasson Roast or whatever it's called, Bard only sees the surface area, but there's obviously a lot of magic. There's a lot of things happening. It would have been very easy for them to say, yes, there's an underground market there that has even more stuff.
Yeah.
You know, that would have made more sense to me rather than just going, oh, yes, there's this secret pirate trading port that you can only find with this magical map
that conveniently is Lila's map to anywhere from book 1,
which is conveniently Cal picked up,
which is conveniently in his coat pocket.
Yeah, let's not go there.
So
they get this place.
I think is a setup for. It's a breadcrumb for potential future stuff.
Yeah, but
no,
I didn't mind the map so much. I didn't mind the map because the map was continuous from book 1. That actually I didn't mind. But if it had just been that Sassafras was off the map and you had to have a map to get to it or something, it would have been good. Like if they'd said yes, it's an island, but it's got so much magical protection or something that you have to have one of these pirate maps to physically get through the barrier or something. That would have made more sense to me, because we're given this port at the start. We know what it is. We've seen it. And to then be told, no, there's actually another market underneath it, rather than this whole new item that we have to go find, this whole new location. Anyway, so they get to this location, and it is effectively 4 or 5 ships just lashed together with other things added on top of it. Let's just say I don't want to see it in the maelstrom, but
oh, what have I done? And
then you the experience seeing what happens if they fail to get on board. So this is a great secret place that only few people know of, yet there's some random guy there getting thrown off the boat just as they turn up.
Yeah.
Okay. So they get inside, and we have a matriarch who pretty much says, go find what you want. Go find what you want, and I will go find what you want, and then we'll trade. So Alucard finds a mirror, shows accurate representations of the past, and then okay, I see Cal as the main protagonist. Okay,
He is. Yeah, he is one of the main ones. He's also kind of boring.
No. He is set up in the first book as like the protagonist. He is the protagonist in the first book, which to me then sort of carries on through the other books, that he's should be the main protagonist. I mean, the others are protagonists in their own right as well, but he should be the main.
Yeah.
He literally does nothing in this book except whinge about Alucard. Really, doesn't he?
He that's why I was like, he's kind of annoying.
But then, like, he doesn't even find, like,
actually.
He is an Atari. He is a great magical being. He's inherited all this power, and he's going through this ship full of magical items, but he is not the one who finds the Atari heirloom
ring. Yeah.
No, Alucard does. And look, they set it up because Alucard can see things that he can't. But they also set up that like sings to like. There's a reason he got a Bard and him ended up together. There's a reason the stone ended up with him. Like, it's the power of the Ataris sort of mixing, and you can use fate as a way of doing it. But she doesn't give it to him to find the object that ultimately allows them to beat this guy. Alucard gets it, which is why I sort of feel like Alucard is kind of a male version of Mary Sue.
Yeah, there's elements there.
There's elements. I mean, he's not a true one, but it's the same with Bud. There's just enough there to make me go, come on, he can't do all of that in his little tiny career of 3 days of being a pirate. See, because my main issue with the pirates in this world is one never was one, and the other one was one for 3 days, whereupon he was pretty much incapacitated for the three of them, because I think you said he had a broken arm and several broken ribs at the time.
Yeah.
Yet he knows about this highly secret trading center.
Yeah. So the highly secret thing. I don't think he knows about that from that. I think he knows about that from privateering and breaking the rules.
But that's my problem. He shouldn't know about it from privateering. He should know about it from being a pirate, because it's a pirate trading center.
Well, they do have him as a privateer going to the pirate places and trading black market goods. So it's not that far of a stretch out of the established characterization. The bit where it becomes confusing is when he lies to the king and says, oh, it was before I worked for the crown, obviously. Which is like an obvious lie. In my opinion, at least. But it does confuse the timelines. And for character,
the problem I have here is a logic issue. Okay, this is the problem I have, is a logic issue. He has been tasked by the crown to hunt down and kill the pirates. That's literally what his job is: hunt down and kill the pirates. So why would any of them trust him to trade in black market items? His ship is known as a privateer ship. He is known as a privateer captain. Why would any pirate or pirate trading port trust him to allow him to trade in black market goods if he is known to actually hunt them down and kill them?
Yeah.
So I have no problem with knowing this information. I just think that she needed to establish that he was a pirate longer than 3 days to actually give him that information.
And so that's one of the timelines that doesn't match up. So that's a timeline directly from the short story, where the timelines are a lot clearer, but it doesn't quite match the book.
When in the book, they give you the impression he was a pirate for some years before he became a privateer. But the problem with that is that ages him up and makes him significantly older than the child he was having a love affair with.
Yeah.
So you can't win either way. either the timing is wrong for him to know pirate stuff, or the timing is wrong to make it highly inappropriate what he was doing. And that is a fundamental issue in the timing, you know.
It's an issue either way, and the short story gets around it. Oh god, if I looped that the wrong way, haven't I? Oh, I hate it when I do that. In the restitching, I think I've twisted a stitch.
No, you're gonna have to drop down. I have officially that much left of my blanket to do, and I think I'm going to run out of yarn.
You know what? Because this is in such a position and it's somewhere where I've got like this loop that I was about to try and feed back in anyway, I'm not going to unpick. I'm just going to snip, and then it's that first stitch, and I just have to fix that one stitch, and I've got the thread. Yeah. So the problem with Alucard is he has a past relationship with Rye from when Rye was 17.
Which I ranted about at length in our last one.
And he was 20, almost 21. So there's a 3-year and a bit age difference between the two of them, which isn't huge once they're adults, but like in the short story, it's better set up, but it's recognized as like borderline problematic.
See, but also too is the issue I have is I'm not so much an issue with the age itself, because the age as written is only about, I think it's like 3.5 to 4 years. Even in the book, it's written about that. But the problem I have with Alucard is his character's history and the knowledge that he has makes him read as a 30-something veteran.
Well, he also appears to be older because he's traded several years of his life for magical items. So he has the appearance of a 30-year-old.
But you don't know that until 2/3 of the way into the book, where you realize he's been trading with this lady before. So up until that point, all the way through book 2 and about 2/3 of book 3, to me, he just felt like a 35-year-old something man. Which makes sense for his history. It makes sense for the piracy. It makes sense for the ships, you know, because it takes time to travel on ships. I still have issue with the fact that it only took them something like 3 days to find this pirate ship, which means that it's somewhere in the English Channel.
Yeah, I haven't really considered the geography.
Well, she doesn't. This is the problem with her world setup, is she's established Grey London as our London. So you think of our geography, but but they do actually say that the Londons are the same, but not necessarily their position in the world is the same. So Red London could be in the Caribbean for all we know, but she hasn't actually told us that. So your brain automatically assumes that it is the same as Grey London, which is on the island of Great Britain. And so in my head, when it only takes them 3 days to find this pirate vessel, I'm going, as if someone that rich would be sitting their ass in freezing cold English Channel.
Yep. They do say, though, that they are
going logic problems, guys. This is why my books take so long to write. Seriously. And I'm still not perfect. It's still shit people are going to read and go, you fucked up here. I'm going to go, yes, I know, but I'm not going to fix it because I'm done. You know, it's just, I hyper-focus.
It's definitely one of the things. So, so one of the issues I noticed on reading the short story as well with Alucard is that his age, aside from the age difference, not really looking at that at all, the timeline doesn't match up, because I'm not sure if it's in the book that they say he's 26. I don't think they do say how old he is in the book.
No, I had to go to Wikipedia to find it.
The wiki is wrong. But the
Wow.
wiki is wrong because it's quoting Schwab saying how old he is.
Yes. Well, actually, I think it says no one really knows, but Schwab has said he's 26.
Schwab has said he's 26, and
that's when I did the back.
The author is wrong, but with the timeline that she said, she's wrong.
Yeah.
Because he should be 25.
But it's still not long enough. It's still not long enough for all the stuff he's meant to have done. He's meant to have great renown as this and that. And
it says he was at sea for 3 years. He was almost 21 when he was having the relationship with Rye. Then he got sent away. It was a couple of months. So when he got sent out as a privateer for the first time, he is probably just turned 21, if not only a couple months. He's maximum 21 and a couple of months old, depending on how much almost 21 it is. Rye by this time would be almost 18. Whatever. So Rye was 17. It's been 3 years and now he's 20.
See, when I vaguely recall somewhere in book 2, them saying Rise was 16 when he left. So I think she stuffed that up too.
Yeah. So there's some inconsistencies there about the ages, about how old he was. So in the short story, he's 17. Then it might have been something that they changed at various points and then forgot which one it was supposed to be. So in some, he's 16 and it's been 4 years, and in others, he's 17 and it's been 3 years.
Yeah, well.
But
we've all been there and done that. But I mean, I would have thought her editor would have at least fact-checked that.
It's something they should have picked up, yeah. Either way, Alucard is 21, let's say, or almost 21 when he's sent out. 3 years later, he's going to be 24.
Mm-hmm. And that's when he's in jail and Daddy goes and finds him?
No, that's when he gets back for the Essentage.
So when did Daddy go and find him?
So
this is the problem.
Here's another thing. When is the dad dead? Is the dad dead when he gets back before he becomes a privateer?
I kind of got the impression that Dad was still alive, just hidden somewhere in the mansion, old and decrepit. Because he even says something.
It says in the short story. It says somewhere in the short story.
I got the impression he was still alive when he comes back in book 3 when he goes to the book 2 when he goes to the mansion. I got the impression that his brother was saying, "Don't make me go get Dad" or something. Maybe
no,
I misread
that was the flashback.
Oh, no. The flashback. Yes.
The dad is
no. This was long before the flashback.
The dad is
first. You sure?
The dad is definitely dead. Oh yeah. I'm absolutely sure. He is dead somewhere around the point that Alucard is in prison for being a pirate.
Yes. So, okay, if you're to believe the short story as you were telling us, he's around about 21. He goes out on a merchant vessel, bound up, broken arm, broken ribs, absolutely useless to a man on the sea, but let's not go there. He's on that ship for a week, not even a week, and the ship is attacked by pirates and he gets commandeered into the pirates.
There is
3 days as a pirate before he's captured and put in prison, and he's in prison as a pirate when Daddy King goes and finds him. So we're talking weeks, not years.
He's in prison for a number of weeks.
So we're talking maybe at most 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
I just found another issue. So when they go to the floating island market, secret market thing, the last time he was there, he traded several years of his life to buy the death of his father. That's what he says when they're on the way back. His dad died before he was released out
of the prison.
Before he was released as a privateer, I think.
So are they trying to imply that the 3 days he was on board a pirate vessel, he ended up going to this magic place where he still would have been bound with broken ribs and a broken arm and useless to the crew, and they probably wouldn't have even trusted him enough to go somewhere like that?
I've got to pull up this short story now and check if that's when the dad dies. Because if the dad dies after he's gone out to sea, then
As
it's
a
a bit
privateer.
possible. I will say, though, there's one sentence in the short story that fucks up a lot of things, and that is the sentence, 3 days later, they were caught. Because if that hadn't been in there, if it had been 3 months later or whatever, anything other than 3 days would have made it just more plausible. Not entirely plausible, but so much more plausible than 3 days for him to actually get some skills sailing as a pirate.
Well, also too, is my issue is it takes a long time to build trust. So you've just taken a ship, you've stolen all its goodies, you've taken someone on board that you've press ganged into becoming a pirate.
Yeah.
They haven't proven themselves. They've got a broken arm. They won't be able to prove themselves for some time unless you've got a healer on board, which is never mentioned, I'm assuming. Then you're not going to go to your haunts. You're not going to go to your safe houses. You're not going to go to these highly secret magical trading ports unless you're desperate. But if you're that desperate, then why did you take someone on board? Why didn't you just kill everybody, steal the stuff, and keep going? My other issue is how did Daddy find out he was in prison?
Well, once he was caught, he kept telling them who he was to try and get out of it. He's like, no, I'm not a pirate. I was press ganged into this. This is help. But they don't believe him for a while until eventually they send like a emissary to come and they pull him out. But by that time, he's been there.
Okay. That would work for me with the 3 days for the pirates, because that would explain it. He goes, hang on, yeah, he was just sent out. This is strange. Why is he suddenly a pirate when he's only been gone 3 weeks?
Yeah.
That would make
it's
sense.
Enough time for them to not believe him. Eventually, message gets back to the dad. The dad and whatever follow up with the people he was sent out with, discover that the ship has been hit by pirates and go, yeah, actually, that's legit. And then they finally send someone. They probably, you know what? Even if the message was sent straight away, the dad's such a douchebag that he probably was just like, you know what? Just leave him in prison for a bit.
I was about to say, there's a fundamental problem here. And that's the fact that you're assuming Dad gave a shit.
I'm assuming he probably didn't. And that's where it would work up timeline-wise if that was then he died and that's when they let him out. But then you have the issue of it 3 days. And in this time, he visited the place and bought his father's death in that time.
Or the vice versa, he does it as a privateer, but why would anyone trust him to give him that information?
Well, his privateering and like rule breaking in that area is set up loosely enough that I'll give it a pass. Like I'd give it a pass on semi-plausibility, but it could use a bit more fleshing out. Because he doesn't go around, he doesn't fly the royal colours. He acts enough of a pirate that Lila assumes they're pirates until he tells her otherwise. But I don't know. I feel like there's like a few, there's quite a few massive logic holes in his entire character and timeline that just are the ones that cause so many issues. And we lost Renee. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I wish they'd taken the time to fill in these plot holes and figure out a way to make it work more logically. Because if you get past all of that, it's a fucking great character. There's just the issues of it being overskilled and timelines not lining up and all of that then get in the way. Because you're like, well, hang on, how has he got all these skills? This doesn't make sense. But if they fixed that, then it'd be great. They just haven't fixed it. Oh, we've lost Renee. What does this message say? It wasn't in. Fuck. Oh, power. Okay, so Renee's battery just died, I think. So she's got to find a charger, and we'll be back. Anyway, let's see. What else can we talk about from the plot? Also, I'm slowly getting this mess sorted in the knitting as I go. I made the decision to try and fix my missed pattern thing, and it's just resulted in all of these strands of thread, which I could just snip and sew them in later, but I kind of don't want to. So I'm going to try and fix it. Where are we? This one goes back to this one. Goes back to this one. But, and we've said this multiple times as well, like these are like really enjoyable books, and we nitpick on all of these things because they're the same things that
fun.
Lost battery.
It didn't give me any warning either. Like normally it says you're low. Hello. Normally it says like you're low power or something. No, it just went off. I'm like, fuck, what's happened to my laptop?
What happened on my end was just it looks like you just turned your camera off.
Yeah,
but
that's good.
No, like it just went to what? Yeah. Like 8.
Yeah, I'll see you in the morning.
See you in the morning. All right. Night.
No.
It took you into avatar mode like this.
Oh yeah.
So it just looked like this, but then obviously there's no sound. So I was like, I don't know what happened there. And then I checked my phone and saw. I was like, huh.
You were in mid rant.
Well, I was like, yeah, the problems with Alucard was like, there's just like a couple of logic holes that you just really want to be fixed, because other than that, he's a fucking great character. Like such a fun character. The dialogue, the characterization is all brilliant. It's just these logic holes of like the timeline not making sense and the age not making sense. In order for it to be like working. And I think all of those probably stem from him being the love interest for Rai. And they had to try and make him younger so that the love interest storyline was at least passably acceptable.
Okay.
Without being completely creepy.
This is why to me it feels YA. Okay, I think this is my problem with this. I'm just thinking about this now. Just thinking about this discussion we've had tonight. This is why this book feels like YA dressed up as adult to me, because they didn't go there. So there's the subtle hint that there are slaves in this world. There's the subtle hint that there is child trading because of Cal. There's the subtle hint of a darker life, right? But Cal was sold as a child. He was raised in a very affluent family. He's from Prince, for crying out loud. So he dodged a bullet. He could have gone anywhere, okay? But there was nothing stopping, as I was saying earlier, Alucard's out with maybe an uncle on the seas at 8 years old. He gets captured. He goes pirate. At 16, he gets rescued. Comes back. He has his affair with the 15 or 16-year-old prince. He goes to sea again. He comes back at 2021, and we have the relationship clearly established. There may be 12 months different age between them. The problem with that is that having an 8-year-old having to survive life as a pirate would be very, very dark.
Yeah.
And
he already has like a dark backstory. Like that would take it. He already has like a pretty dark backstory, so that would take it like even further.
But that would make it to me an adult, is because they're not afraid to go there.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're having this argument about ages, because literally we're arguing about whether or not Rise was 15 or 16 when they had this relationship and he was 20, 21 or whatever, it's just this age thing tells me that it's too tight a timeline. And if it was truly an adult book and she wanted to explore themes of slavery, which she sort of does touch on with the Cal and the Holland stuff, she could have made Alucard another version of someone who could have ended up a slave but ended up maybe making a deal with the pirates and surviving and doing it out of necessity, rather than it feeling like, oh, I was a pirate for 3 days, aren't I cool? To me, sounds much more of an adult setup for a character than what we're dealing with here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Sue was saying something. Marriages and relationships were very often older and very young marriages for the need of the female images in terms of succession. Yeah. So that works in a sense, but like...
Yeah. Oh, I saw your other note there, Sue, about it sounds like a second draft. No, to be honest, it's a very well-polished book. It's just I'm picking the shit out of it because I wanted it to be better. I actually wanted it to be a really good book. And
I'd say it's a really good book. The issues aren't in the writing or aren't in it being a second draft or anything. The issues are like just little holes in the logic. Even like a lot of the holes in the logic is just stuff that's missing.
Yes.
And there's still room to explain it. But because there's no explanation there and it's skimmed over an explanation, or it's issues with the timeline. So,
well, as I said from the start, the fundamental issue for me is that we're established in the timeline for Grey London, where we start. We're established in a certain timeline, and that timeline assumption bleeds over to the other Londons. And without actually a clear, definitive, this is what's different in this world, then you're assuming that what you know of Grey London carries over. And if there had been a little bit more clarity in the fact that, no, this is different, that's different, that would have solved a lot of the main issues. But Alucard, unfortunately for me, his entire backstory needs a full rewrite.
Yeah. There's so
Because-
many issues with the timeline and the age and stuff. Like, I would accept it as is if they'd given you some sort of backstory detail that explained why he has sailing and fighting skills on top of the magic skills. Because to me, the only one that's justifiable is his magic skill.
And make his family seafarers or something. Make them
Yeah,
like
if
the
his
king's
family was like
navy.
the head of the Royal Navy, that would
Bingo,
that
done.
would have made so much more sense. But
Which also
it's
would
not.
have meant that he had been trained from a very young age to sail.
Yeah. I
As it
wonder
is, he
whether
just
it actually is meant to be, their family is meant to be naval in
no,
origin.
because brothers got nothing. No, because they chucked him on a merchant vessel. Wouldn't they have chucked him on one of their own naval vessels to get him out?
Not necessarily, because they weren't doing like a honorable sort of thing. They were doing a shady.
Yeah, no, but they don't give me the impression of being.
Yeah. It's vague enough that they could have changed that without it changing any of the story and made that the thing.
Correct, yeah. Yeah,
But
when
I
they
don't
sort of
think
just sound like
that was
they sort of
detailed.
at the moment just sound like rich merchants or something, rich nobility.
Yeah.
They don't sound like they've got any sort of, in fact, to me, it would actually make sense if they were a naval family under the king, because the king is like their distant cousin or something and they're loyal to him. That would
Yeah.
make sense to me. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's his issues is and I think he illustrates my main issue with the book is that if it was adult and they wanted to explore, so there's the opportunity to give a parallel with Cal there and with Holland of someone who refused to take the choice of slavery. And what did he do instead? He chose freedom, which is piracy.
Yeah.
So that to me would have been a very interesting third aspect to look at. And the fact that they didn't go there is probably one of the main reasons that I feel like it's more YA than anything else, because I just feel like she was starting to touch on themes, starting to touch on issues, and then drew away from them because they were getting too dark.
Yeah, it does. And I think she does this on a lot of things as well.
Oh, Addie,
Yeah.
definitely.
Where there's the opportunity and it's not explored to the fullest that it could be.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because sometimes you do just want to hint at that theme. But hinting at that theme in a YA means that you can, as you get older and go and reread it as an adult or whatever, you pick up more. When here, I'm sort of feeling like I was left wanting more.
Yeah. I think that's the main problem of the entire series. Like the one thing that would have fixed probably 90% of the issues that we've raised would be just more detail.
Oh, so I feel the same. Don't get me wrong. For my own stuff, I feel the same. But this is the fourth V.E.Schwab book we've read now, and all of them have the same problems. So it's just something in her writing. She goes for the or Addie definitely is more the experience of reading. So the journey through the world than actually worrying about these little niggling things like world building and timelines.
It focuses more on like the reading experience, the language, the characters' internal landscape than the.
But it doesn't even really dig too deep into that, because I mean, I would love an in-depth exploration into what exactly really has happened between Cal and Rise, and how is that magic going to affect, the situation with him, one, not having any magic at all, and now the crown prince / king is effectively a zombie.
Mm.
So it's but they don't go there. Like she starts to touch on it and then goes, oh no, that might be a bit dark. I'm going to go over here and do pretty relationship things, or oh look, Bard is fingering her dagger, wondering if she should kill Holland, but oh, let's fail at that because we're not even good at that.
Yeah.
But,
I forget to stretch stuff. There we go.
anyway, let's start wrapping up because I'm getting tired. I really need to get some sleep. I've got a long day tomorrow.
We've been going for like 2.5 hours already.
Yes, we have.
We've focused a lot on the logic hole issues of like the series overall.
Yes.
While delving into it, and I think it's just a hallmark of, if not of Schwab as a whole, because I don't think it is necessarily across all works. I think it's this series and Addie are dealing with the same problems of timeline, because they're both the sort of fantasy time travel setting.
Oh, look, it's not going to stop me from trying Vicious.
Vicious, I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see how that differs.
Yeah,
and
it's not going to stop me.
Really love reading her stuff because it is enjoyable to read. Like the reading experience is really good. It's just the logical issues
the problem I have with reading her at the moment is the fundamental issue I have with pretty much any fantasy at the moment, and that's just I'm just not in the mood for fantasy.
Not in the mood.
Yeah. I want to read sci-fi. So I don't hate her stuff. Don't get me wrong. I know I've ranted for very lengthy time frames over all 3 books. But it's not that I hate them. In fact, it's the fact that I enjoyed certain elements that I just wanted to see the other stuff shine as well.
Yeah.
Is more my problem. And so I focused on the stuff that drove me nuts because I'm like, well, why didn't anyone point this out, sort of thing,
Yeah. And I think it's also, like we've said multiple times as well, this is all the stuff that we talk about all the time as well. So we don't really talk about making the prose flowery and the writing really nice to read and all of that stuff. The stuff that we talk about is the nitty-gritty logic holes and the craft and all of that side of things. And so it's really also the stuff that we notice. Like we'll notice the other stuff, but we have a lot more to say about those things.
Correct.
So that's inevitably.
And there's never going to be a perfect book. Like I'm sure I want to reread the 5th season before we read Obelisk Gate. And I'm sure I'm going to read the 5th season. And now that I've read it once and sort of figured out what's going on with the the spoiler of what's going on with the difference in the characters, I'll be able to focus more on the world and the world building. And I'm probably going to pick up the same, if not. Sorry, I got a screaming child. I say screaming, but moaning in her sleep. But yeah, I'm probably going to pick up on similar issues in her, and it's not because it's not, it's just that nobody's perfect. We're all going to have issues. My stuff's going to have the same issues or versions of it.
If we compared that to my book, even currently, I know there's still issues in there. Like, and that's after 3 years of work of figuring stuff out. This is still the stuff that I'm trying to figure out and
that's the real kicker, and that's something I think we've got to take into account is these are traditionally published books, and okay, the first book she may have had a couple of years to put together. The first book's pretty tight. I quite like the first one. The second book feels like it's got second book problems. And the third book feels like it should have been the second book. Like I feel like the second and the third book, I feel like they could have been merged and a lot could have been edited out of it, and it still would have been a really damn good story.
I agree on that point as well.
Book, but it would have been interesting to keep going and see, well, she's going to keep going now, but I mean, at the time, the third book, if it had kept going and it was them trying to figure out how to fix Rise or do something, because the kingdom is potentially being plunged into war right now. So, it would have been interesting to see the fallout from this, when I'm not so much interested in the fallout from book 1. I'm more interested in the fallout from book 3 at this point.
Yeah. Setup wise, in terms of expanding into another series, I think it's
definitely got it.
Actually, this is something similar, very similar to Mistborn as well, in that the second series of Mistborn I find it's like a much more interesting setting. And that's similar in that the first series sets up, by the end of the first series, you've got a really interesting world that you can go back into. And that's not to say that the initial world isn't interesting, but it's that it's a similar thing in that, like, by the time you get to the end of the first one, it's you want to see how stuff plays out. I guess because part of it is you've already got the answers from what happened, but
I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be convinced to read the next one.
The Threads of Power ones?
Yeah, I don't know. Because, look, I might walk away and go, no, it's a series. I quite liked it, blah, 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 blah. I think I'll read it. I just, at the moment, I'm not compelled enough. I would have liked to have seen a shitload more from Cal in this book. And in the second book too. In the second book, he's a prop for his brother. Let's be honest here. In the second book, he's just doing what his brother's told him to do. Yes, he's getting benefit from it, but also too, the second book makes no sense to me in the way the parents are treating him, because
the parents,
it just doesn't make sense.
The parents in book 2, I think, irritated me way more than book 1. Book 1, they sort of made sense.
Well, they're absent in book 1, really. They're there for like a breakfast, and that's about it. And that makes more sense because they're there, they're doing their thing, they're letting Cal do his thing, they're letting Raz do his thing. That makes more sense, book 1. But book 2, this reaction to him saving Rise and doing this binding thing with him is to treat Cal like he's an outsider, which is absolutely ridiculous, because wouldn't you keep him as close as possible to keep him alive? It just doesn't make sense. If they were suddenly fearful of him because they realized just how powerful he was to have done what he did, not realizing that it was the stone at the time as well, that would be okay. But it isn't that. It is literally explained as in, you did this to our son and we've just been pushing you away because we felt like we should.
Well, yeah. It's also like, it's not that big of a step from how they were treating him previously as well, because
he was a true slave.
There was that control and everything. So it's the element of suspicion just shatters the illusion. What it reminds me of, and I can't shake it, is there's a tag on AO3 for the Marvel fandom, which is Odin's A+ parenting skills, which is a sarcastic tag.
Yes.
And that's what this parental relationship reminds me of. And like, the more I was like trying not to think of it in comparison to that tag, but then I was like, no, well, the tag is representative of also of the films, of Odin's parenting of Loki in those films.
Yeah. Oh, even of Thor, he's just stupid.
He's not the best father at all. He's very
he's an idiot.
He's
when it comes to being a father, he's an idiot. I mean, look at his firstborn. I mean, there's some great parenting skills for you there. But yeah, so no, I agree with that. But the problem is now I've got the comic. I'm gonna give the comic a go, but I'm already set to not like the main character of the comic because I just think he was a dick in the books.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a bit hard for me to actually like, because when you sort of look at the premise of what the comic is about, I'm like, well, that to me sounds interesting. About him trying to survive the piratey area, but
Yeah. You almost have to just forget about who he was in the books in order to enjoy the comics, I think.
Well, he only became, as I said, he only became interesting to me when he decided to effectively sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
And they didn't need to kill Mum. They really, that was just completely useless.
But she was also completely useless as a character, so
She was building up to be potentially something more because she was starting to discuss her ability, her magic, and actually write it up as something that might because she says she could hear everyone, like she could hear everything. So some sort of telepathy. They didn't quite sort of explain 100% what it was, but you would have thought, well, this is these people that were being taken over by the big bad were being mind controlled. So she could have become the solution or some form of solution.
yeah.
But instead, they just killed her off with a really, really stupid assassination plot. Oh my
I forgot
god!
we hadn't gotten to that bit yet. And on the
Oh,
first read, it didn't bother me. And then on the second read, because by the time it got to that point, we'd already had the conversations. On the second read, I was like, yeah, this really is kind of just like,
I've written these characters into a corner. Let's make them assassins.
it's sort of like it didn't.
Look,
it was kind of
okay.
not.
So one of the kingdoms that come to town for this big competition. It's a very young girl and her brother. They're the
16 and,
sixth
like,
and fifth in
19
line
or
to the
something.
throne. Okay, and she spends 2 entire books trying to get close to Cal, trying to, bat her eyes at Cal and win his affections. And you're assuming she's trying to entrap him in some marriage so they could steal the Atari away from London, that kind of situation or something along those lines. Or she wants to use him to get to the crown prince so she can do the same because she's a princess. She's an eligible match for the prince.
Yeah.
And she would also forge an alliance with said other country if they had nuptials. So it would actually make perfect sense for her to be a potential bride for Rice, right?
Right, yeah.
And Rye, I keep calling him Rice. And then they just turn around and halfway through this night of dark nights and everything's happening and she just decides she's going to assassinate the king.
The royal family. Yeah.
And her brother's going to assassinate Mum and Rye. And you're like,
it's like,
what?
but it's also, it's sort of like, it's not a plot from her royal family. It's like
Oh, yeah,
herself.
no, it's written off. There is always the question that they may still have been sent, but they've written them off because they failed. There is also that.
There is that, but it's like.
But I'm like, wouldn't it have been smarter politically to try to convince the king and queen to give, to marry her to one of the princes? Wouldn't that make more sense?
It could have been like the try this and then if it doesn't work, you can kill him sort of thing.
But she hadn't tried anything except simpering and Google eyeing at Cal whilst he's running around after Bard.
Yeah. She
So
probably
it's
would
making
like
sense.
the only way you could justify it is with her being like, okay, well he's clearly otherwise occupied and this isn't gonna work. So fuck it, let's kill him. But also, yeah, their assassination attempt is weak. It's not great.
See, Suey, like what you're saying sounds logical if we're talking YA, but it's not a YA. Why would you simp away from making an adult book dark?
Yeah.
It's not a cozy romance. It's not a cozy mystery. It's a fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it does border the line. Like
Sarah Douglas, Battle Axe. I mean, that series, it's not fantastic, but it's an adult fantasy, and there is all sorts of shit in that series. You know, they're not exploring themes of personal issues, but the main character, the Battle Axe in that book, had he's like a winged race, but he literally had his wings cut out of his body when he was growing up. You know, or I think one of the female characters pretty much gets gang raped at one point, and then they're like, "Oh, but you're a princess. You should go off and do this," and she's like, "Fuck you all."
Yeah.
You know, fuck you all. Fuck
Let's
a lot of
chill
you.
out.
You know, but it's not a dark fantasy. It's just a fantasy series. And it's just because it's an adult book, it doesn't shy away from things that pretty nasty adults will do. I think that's one thing I want to do. I want to read Abercrombie. I've got to get around to reading Abercrombie. Apparently, he's not afraid of that.
Yeah, that's one of the other issues. So what was the issue I said before? The one issue I said before was it just needs more detail.
Yeah,
and that's
it's
a lot
so
of issues.
If we'd gone into this and said it was a YA series, then I probably wouldn't be so picky about it.
Yeah.
Like I probably would be like, yeah, cool, no worries, I'm good, you know. But yeah.
Yeah. So one issue is the YA adult borderline.
I think that's the fundamental issue for me. Like other than the description, like the setup, the real fundamental issue. So the two big issues for me is the fundamental setup, where you make an assumption based on the fact that one of your comparison points is London, our world, circular around about 1900s. 18. What did you say?
1820s almost.
Yeah.
1810s.
And then the other issue, and so then the differences aren't explained properly for the other Londons.
Yeah.
And the other issue is that it's classified as an adult, but it just doesn't seem to want to take that next step.
It's classified as an adult, but it's written like a well-written YA.
Oh, look, if it was a YA, it'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think I said that earlier. And it's not that it's bad book. It's just that you get when you read a lot of adult science fiction and fantasy with a certain, well, I do read dark science fiction and fantasy, let's be honest here. But you do go into it with like Fifth Season, adult fantasy, not considered dark, just an adult fantasy. It opens with her son's having his head caved in by his father. You know, I just can't see Schwab going there in her fantasy. In this world. I can't see her going there in this world the way it's been set up. It doesn't feel like she's going to show that kind of humanity.
Yeah,
which
so this was
me makes it more YA.
I got sidetracked halfway through what I was going to say.
Yeah,
so the one problem is not enough detail. And another problem is the classification between YA and adult. It's right on the border, And I would say it's like it can be justifiably put in adult. However, then it has like the YA sort of issues. The other issue was that, and I think you said this when we were doing book 1, is that the characters, like most of the characters, a lot of the characters have like the point where there's I'm trying to work out how to get this into words. They're shying away from making them too bad.
Yes. They're shining. Yeah.
You said in book 1, they're sort of they're privateers rather than full out pirates. Is one example.
Which is why I'm shoving it in YA as opposed to adult, because if it was an adult, there would be no reason to not make them pirates.
Yeah. So
so
there's too much concern on making sure that the characters are
acceptable.
Still acceptable, even though they're morally grey. Like Lila is probably the furthest they push it.
The problem I have with Lila, is she tells you how she's murdered people in the past. Like she's murdered people. She's murdered people. You know that? She's murdered people.
Yeah.
Just like she's a pirate.
Yeah.
But the only time you see her killing someone is when it's in self-defense and justified. Yet she's murdered people.
Yeah. She kills, doesn't she? She kills like a couple of the pirates as revenge, but there's always some
the only people she kills, which she probably didn't have to kill, were the people that shoved her in a box and tried to ship her out to sea.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say she probably didn't need to kill them is because why the fuck did she think that she was going to bloody get into that? Like the whole setup for getting her into the magic competition was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason I think that's useless, is because it's not because of the situations. Like, okay, she is fully justified in killing them out of revenge. Don't have a problem there. But the whole setup with her getting, shipping this guy off and taking his place and all that sort of stuff was just, it was unnecessary. She's killed people, she's killed people. You didn't need that, she's killed people, it's just, it's like, come on, anyway.
Yeah.
But that's it though. Like that's my thing is it just doesn't, every time you start thinking, oh, this is going to get good, these people are going to flesh out and actually have to start dealing with the consequences of their actions, like actually dealing with the morality of actually killing someone. No, just kill them and move on. That's fine. We won't really mention it. It's going to kind of be off screen. That makes them a bit more palatable, but they're morally grey because they've killed
morally grey.
Yes.
Morally grey characters.
Yeah. I guess I'm a bit bitter and dark about that, because to me a pirate is a pirate. A pirate goes out and does pirate shit, people. They don't just talk about being a pirate.
Yeah, and like Pirates of the Caribbean does it well in the constant debate theme throughout the films he's a pirate but a good man.
I like those moments. I like to wave at them as they pass by. Perfect line.
Yeah.
Best line. But yeah, no, totally agree. Like Pirates does it well. And Pirates still manages to keep a PG rating. Is it PG? Yes, it is. It's family friendly.
Yeah, it's PG or M.
But they get away. See, and they also, but they've used magic to their advantage there.
Yes.
When the problem we have here is the magic is something to be solved and controlled rather than actually being part of the world.
Yeah. Or is it we've got to do before it makes up?
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, what is it? Okay, what am I up to? I'm up to.
Well, I think we're getting up to 3 hours. I think we'll got to call it there. I need to get some sleep. I've got a big drive tomorrow.
15, 16,
So,
17,
and I'm going to have 2 screaming kids in the car with me. So,
okay.
you good? Okay. Final thoughts.
I still really like the series. I
don't hate it.
Frustrated by the amount of logic holes.
Sorry,
but
not so much.
Overall, I really enjoy it, and it's a very enjoyable read, and it's beautifully written.
It's fun.
It
is
a beautiful
fun.
reading experience.
Yeah, it is fun to read.
There's a lot you can learn from it as well, like in terms of characterization, but also characterization and character consistencies. 1, 2.
I would definitely.
I would
definitely highlight the character consistency issues as something to learn from. Definitely.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And I also think it's just character in general, because one of the as I keep going on about how Bard's a pirate, but that's it. The whole reason it drove me up the wall is because she wasn't a pirate, but she kept calling herself one. And I know that's her ego, but it's like, you're not a pirate. Stop calling yourself one. Stop telling people you're one, because you're not. And that was actually a characterization that actually drove her over the edge from mildly annoying to I really don't like you at the moment thing. But it's good to read, because it's a good thing to learn, you know. You have got so much of a mess there.
I was trying to untangle it and I accidentally looped it around one and ended up tangling it more.
Been there, done that today.
I'm trying to because I've only got 2 balls and now I've got 3 bits of brown spot. I'm trying to just measure out an estimated amount until the 3 brown spots join up back into 2, and just have it and just take that amount off, and then move the ball back over to the ends. How many more now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Well, we might call it there because I really need to get some sleep. Have we decided? We haven't decided on next month's book, have we?
No, I don't think we have.
No, we haven't. We haven't even thought about it. Let me bring up Drive.
We probably have something on the list. I'm really kind of in the mood for sci-fi, though.
So am I. I really need a sci-fi. I need a sci-fi desperately. So what have we got? What are our options? Sci-fi. Not many actually. There's Jurassic Park. Neuromancer. We could go good old classic. A Memory Called Empire. Sorry, a memory.
Yeah, that one. Wait, no. You started reading the Murderbot one, didn't you?
Yeah, it hasn't grabbed me. I've got to finish it though. We could do that one. That's just a novella.
Yeah, I don't think I'm quite in the mood for that one either. I should look at the list and see what's on there as well.
Snow Crash.
Huh?
Snow Crash.
What was that one?
It's a cyberpunk. It's a bit like Neuromancer, I believe. I haven't read either of them. I haven't read Neuromancer for so long I don't remember it.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it. I haven't read it yet though.
We could do Jurassic Park.
Don't think I'm in the mood for that one either.
What about Neuromancer?
I think to do Jurassic Park, I'm gonna have to watch the movie and get excited
We'll wait till
about.
the last movie's out. Wait till the last movie's out and we've watched it because that's got the originals back in it. So then I'm going to want to go back and watch the original again.
Yeah, I've never seen any of them. I've seen like bits and pieces, but I've never actually watched like the original.
There's The Empress of Salt and Fortune. That was the Hugo Award Best Novella last year.
Oh, we haven't done Wheel of Time yet either. That's technically
Yeah.
sci-fi. We'll might have to leave that until closer to season 2 coming out. So April we did a Spindle Splintered
Yep.
by Alex E. Harrow. And then May we have done
Well, we could try to fight our way through Woken Furies. Just finish them off.
If we're gonna torture ourselves, we might as well do Savior's Champion or something.
No, trust me, you do not. Trust me, Woken Furies is far superior to Savior's Champion.
Yeah, but like I feel like the rant would be so satisfying, if you know what I mean.
For either. Well, to be honest, I kind of remember Woken Furies as being better than it's the same situation we have here with the Conjuring of Light. It's a better book than Broken Angels, but you got to get through Broken Angels to get to Woken Furies. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I kind of want to just finish off the series, if that makes sense, because my little completionist in me.
Whereas I'm just like, after Broken Angels, I don't think I want to read any more of them.
So I like Richard Morgan's writing. This is the thing. Is you can forgive Schwab a lot of stuff I can't forgive, but I can forgive Richard Morgan a lot of shit that you can't forgive. It's quite interesting, actually. And it's still got the same issues.
And I think it's
different settings.
No, but it's literally the exact same thing because it's the nostalgia. Because you were rereading it and you really enjoyed it the first time for that series.
And remember, I read them when they first came out in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, and also too, the big thing for me was Altered Carbon blew my mind because up until that point, even Neuromancer and the other cyberpunks out there, nothing had the in-your-face, gritty world that Altered Carbon had. I mean, there's so much out there now that does, but at the time, I hadn't read anything or seen anything. So it was like that eye-opening moment of, this is what I want my worlds to look like. You know, this is what I want my sci-fi to look like. So, yes.
Yeah. And look, I do think we will do Woken Furies, and I do think it'll be better than Broken Angels. Because Broken Angels, when it gets down
book syndrome.
Well, when it gets down to it, it's not a terrible plot or anything. It was just the fact that nothing they could do after the first few chapters could actually make me give a shit about the character anymore. And that ruined the entire book. Yeah.
But that's sort of semi the same problem I currently have with the characters in Conjuring of Light. I'm just like, I did like these characters, but I'm just bored now. Move on,
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But at least Delilah Bard doesn't spend an entire book not telling you why she's doing stuff and expecting you to care about it.
Well, the real thing that really hurts me, and this is the problem with Woken Furies, is you know how they found the alien ship?
Yeah.
He just goes home. So Woken Furies is a story about something completely different.
Yeah. So speaking of untapped potential.
Well, see, but that's the thing though, is Takashi Kovacs is that kind of person. He comes in, does the jobs, and leaves. So it does make sense for the character, but it's frustrating for the world building. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Let me see what I've got on my Audible list. We could do some Andy Weir, because I know I've got his newest one saved. That I
Hail
haven't read yet.
Mary.
Yeah, Project Hail Mary, which I
I'm
think
not-
is a sequel.
It's the same universe, but it's not a
Yeah.
sequel. Yeah.
Yeah, same universe, different.
He's done like a standalone in the same universe. I don't know. I'm sort of a bit nervous about reading that one, to be honest. I don't know why I'm so nervous about reading it, but I think I just don't want the Martian to be destroyed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, fun thing from writing excuses is where I heard about it, but apparently Andy Weir and the authors of Leviathan Wakes realized that their books could be set in the same universe, so they made it unofficial canon.
Well, there it is. There's Leviathan Wakes, but that's the start of another series.
That is the start of another series, but there is The Expanse that we can watch at the same time.
I won't lie, I have started Leviathan Wakes and I sort of stopped at about 3 hours in and I just haven't gotten back to it.
Yeah.
What else have we got?
I think I worked out what it is as well. I'm in the mood for sci-fi, but I'm in the mood for my sci-fi.
Yeah, that's the problem. I won't lie.
I really want to like read my book. And
Gunmetal Gods. There's Gunmetal Gods. I think that's more fantasy though.
Is that on our list or is that just a random?
No, that's just I've heard that one recommended to me. It's a I'm pretty sure it's a soft pub.
A Memory Called Empire is that's a sci-fi, isn't it?
Memory Called Empire sci-fi, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that did sound interesting. That reminds me of like Natalie Portman's character from Star Wars. Like the prequels, but like I feel like this would be like that but done well.
You'd want to hope so. It was a Hugo nominee.
Well, that's why I would say that done well rather than just that. What was that other one you just said?
Shit, I've lost it. So what have I got? I've got I don't know, I'm getting very tired. Gunmetal Gods. But I'm pretty sure Gunmetal Gods is a fantasy.
Gunmetal Gods.
Disney Romance. There's Leviathan Wakes. All Systems Red, which is the first Murderbot.
Thrones meets Arabian Nights. So yeah, fantasy.
That
does sound fun. Add that one to the list. That sounds good. Maybe like a steampunk would be good.
The problem with steampunk is the only real steampunks I've seen done well are comics.
Yeah, maybe we should do some more Schlock Mercenary.
Nah, I'm not sorry, Howard. Not in the mood. Let's think about it. Let's chat offline, and we'll come up with something, and we'll announce it later. But yeah, I'm kind of pushing for the cyberpunk theme, to be honest, myself at the moment.
Yeah,
something really cyberpunk. So I might see if I can find a list of decent cyberpunks, and we can maybe find something in there we like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We will have to announce it once we decide
Yes.
later.
No worries. Okay, guys, we're going to sign off because we're up well past 3 hours, and I need to go to bed because I've got a big drive tomorrow. Which I keep trying to remind myself.
Yeah, same. I need to get my shit together for
Oh
tomorrow
shit, it's
as
nearly
well.
12 o'clock. Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for joining.